you haven't done even half of the things that Phil's done in his career. You're a joke, Dean Smith. And getting it, it was so funny. I'm like crying, laughing, like all these hyper freaking Phil Soven fans just sending me all this hate mail and stuff.
On today's episode of the Grab Matters podcast, we welcome on a very special guest, Dean Smith. Dean Smith is a former professional wakeboarder from Australia. He's absolutely known for going bigger than most go on a wakeboard. We talk about his contest riding, some of the biggest pro wins he's had, some of his biggest accomplishments in wakeboarding. We're also talking some video parts, of which he's had quite a few, specifically his 30-something video, which is, in his own words, the stamp that he wanted to put on the industry in terms of his riding. We also get some great pro rider and former pro rider impersonations from Dean himself. We also talk some great back and forth meme content that Dean had with Phil Soven back in the day when Wake Brothers was in the heat of filming and he was getting in Phil's head a little bit. We're also talking PEDs and what could be considered a performance-enhancing drug in wakeboarding and maybe what couldn't be. If you are interested in supporting the podcast, joining the Patreon is the best way to do that. I can't thank the Patreon members enough. It really helps keep this podcast going. Everyone who signs up gets a free sticker pack shipped out to them, no matter where you're at in the world. And if you're on the gold tier, it allows you to see who the guests are early and submit a question for me to ask to them on the podcast. So thank you to all the Patreon subscribers. It really means a ton. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. Without further ado, here's a podcast with Dean Smith.
I approve waterboarding. They're talking about wakeboarding. The thing about wakeboarding, every trick is an invert.
Backside.
One-side air railies.
A new dimension.
We're back. Another episode of the Grab Matters podcast. Today we welcome on a very special guest, Dean Smith. How's it going?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for flying all the way over from Australia just to do this podcast.
Specifically.
It means a lot to me. So you and Amber are in town. Amber's pod came out a little bit ago, but for what, a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks now?
Yeah,
Total?
it was out this week, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So figured I'd have you on. Means a lot for coming out, so thank you. First question, wake pants, yes or no?
I had 2 pairs back in the day.
You did?
Yeah, I had 2. I had Spoon. Spoon made some. They were grey. And then Jet Pilot.
Yeah, you had the Jet Pilot ones?
Yeah, they were yellow. Like, we want yellow, like tan. So I had 2 pairs, so I can't hate on it. So I ran the absolute shit out of them for...
So you can't hate on them. I did, watch a lot of your riding before this, and you are a no shirt over vest guy. You're a classic just vest from most of the clips I saw.
Yeah, I don't know. Why
Why
would
is
I
that?
wear a shirt?
I don't know. I'm just wondering. I'm wondering. A lot of people go with shirt over or the wake pants and stuff just to cover up.
No, shirt's uncomfortable. Like if I'll ride park now. Maybe I'm just trying to fit in with the kids, but I'll wear like a jacket if it's cold instead of wearing a wetsuit. But yeah, I back then as well, I was with Ripco, and there's no way they would have let me wear anything over a vest.
Yeah.
So that was probably more to do with it.
And that makes sense because I feel like if you're a kid trying to get like a life jacket sponsor or something, it's like, well, don't cover up the brand name of the person that's you're trying to get to pay you.
Nah, there's no way I could have worn a shirt over the top. But I think riding boat, I would have been uncomfortable anyway.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't know. I never considered ever wearing a shirt. The wake pants, I had wake pants back in the day through winter if I was wearing a steamer. Now I just run Winnie the Pooh.
A little Pooh Bear situation.
No question. It's all good.
I mean, it all matters how you feel. If you feel good in the Winnie the Pooh, then you're all right.
I'm Winnie the Pooh. I'm happy in my pants.
I got a question. What were you doing up at 2:30 a.m. last night?
Because
that's when you shot me a
I've been
message.
so sick. I was actually sick. I should have told you before I got here. I was literally woke up to go cough my guts up in the toilet.
Well, you sound good now. So
yeah, no, I'm all good. No, I'm a little croaky, but yeah, I was literally woke up last night because I was coughing my guts up, and then saw I had a message from you at like midnight. I was like, may as well respond. So yeah, that's what I was doing. I was literally coughing up my lung into the toilet.
Fair enough. That could be an excuse. We'll never know.
Yeah. If I cough up my lung during this podcast, I apologize.
You'll know why. Try to cut it out best I can. So I did have Amber on, as I was talking about. Mm-hmm. And I just want to confirm that there was never a discussion of you taking her last name when you guys got married.
Nah, probably would have been cooler.
That's what I was saying, dude.
I'm wing by association anyway. If I go to water ski events and stuff, I'm 100% Dean Wing.
That's what I've heard.
I run it. Yeah, I have to run the Dean Wing card. I drop the name left, right, and center. So
I mean, I just figured she's older than you.
She's
got a cooler last name.
And my wife's cooler than me. Who are we kidding? So
that's 3 out of 3 right there.
It is
Dean
what it
Wing,
is.
you heard it here first. See it on the thumbnail.
It is what it is. Yeah.
One last quick one. Do you look like Sean Murray or does Sean Murray look like you?
Oh man. So when I first came over to the US, I got told by Daniel and Josh that I looked like Murray. I was like a doppelganger. And then we used to get photos together at events and stuff, me and Sean. And I have signed an outrageous number of autographs for him. Like
It's a little pro bono work right there.
100%. You go to pro tour stops and stuff, and I have like the biggest crowd at the prep. Like this is back when Danny and everyone in Parks were at the events, and I'd have the biggest lineup for autographs. 100% knowing that they don't know who I am, but they think I'm Murray. 100%.
Do they approach you as like, hey Sean, can I have
As
your
long as I
autograph?
don't talk, they have no idea. And I just signed Dean Smith.
The accent would be a big giveaway.
Until I like, yeah, g'day mate, thanks. Yeah.
Kid gets
Man,
home,
look at
like-
me and they're all confused. But yeah, I've signed so many autographs for
So
sure.
you've been confused for Sean. quite a few times.
100%. Yeah. No question.
I was curious because I saw a funny Instagram video of you, and it was like a filter that comes down.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you're
it was
like,
like
"God damn it."
it was an ongoing joke, like for a long time that me and Murray are like we're even the same height.
Yeah.
And then especially when I started shaving my head, we look like very.
I mean, it's close.
it's pretty damn
it's
close. Like we had like a silhouette shot, Sean and I back to back, and I sent it to Amber, and she couldn't tell which one was me and which one was Sean, which I thought was pretty funny.
It could be way worse guys to look like.
He is jacked at the moment. I spent the weekend with
Ninja Warrior
with
guy.
him. Oh, he's so jacked. If I look like him, it's all right.
All right, let's before we get into a lot of other stuff I want to talk about, let's kind of start off with the early days of wakeboarding. So, obviously from Australia, kind of run us through how you got started wakeboarding and water sports in general.
I started on Port Hacking, so same river that Amber and I both grew up on. My dad just used to water ski. My dad actually used to water ski with Amber's mum when they were like not kids, but a lot younger. My dad used to date one of her mum's friends. So our parents knew each other already before Amber and I even met. So we used to go out skiing and all that sort of stuff. And I just used to kneeboard and like everybody else. And then I think it was the day I got up on a single ski, and a friend of mine brought along a Neptune 6. And that was, I sort of just kept wakeboarding, and that was sort of it. I didn't really come from a skiing background or anything like that. And I just sort of took to it.
Okay.
And kept it up, and yeah, I used to use that Neptune 6, that dead flat board with the little tips turned up at the end. And that was it, yeah, and just fell in love with it.
So I was talking to Amber, and she didn't really have a coach like growing up, like no hardcore, like, but a lot of boat people do. Like either they come from skiing or they get into wakeboarding.
It was just
and they have
us.
a coach.
Yeah.
So you didn't have one either?
No, I mean, I say I didn't have a coach. Like I used to go up to Black Diamond and ride with Scotty Kell with Grummy camps and stuff like that, but he wasn't like a full-time coach or anything. Yeah. He had like a huge part in my progression. But I wouldn't say we had like a full-time coach. We used to just ride with like it was Amber and 4 or 5 friends, and we would just push each other on to try stuff. Like we'd go watch a movie and give it a crack. There'd be a new trick that we saw and go have a try, and we'd figure it all out. So definitely didn't have a full-time coach, but yeah, Scotty Kell would be the closest thing that I had.
Yeah, tips and tricks and stuff, but not like a hired coach where you're
Definitely not a hired
5
coach
days
now.
a week,
But
stuff
I'd go up there a fair bit. Like there'd be probably 2 camps a year or something like that, and I'd go up there as a grom, and that was sort of going up there was a bit of a turning point for me. I learned a heap of tricks when I was up there at one point, and yeah, so that's probably the closest thing there.
Okay, you mentioned movies. What were some of the movies you were watching, back then? You remember?
Oh, dude.
The big ones?
Yeah, well, the first movie I had was Switch 22, and then I don't remember when we got like 12 honkies. Like I couldn't even guess how many times we watched 12 honkies.
Yeah.
Like me and my friend Hank and Scotty Broom, like we used to just sit there and rewind Parks a section, Natural Born Thrillers, rewind Randall section, just backwards. So we used to it was all those movies back in the day. It was like the glory days of all the movies, Boombox and Free for All and all that. So, but definitely 12 honkies and Natural Born Thrillers.
No surprise there.
You got it. 12 honkies over here somewhere.
I do, and Natural Born Thrillers is somewhere.
Do you have MBT?
Look at the bottom behind that cooler. Next to the Parks documentary, I'm pretty
There it
sure.
is.
Yeah,
They're both there.
There you go.
Goated.
So, yeah, Randall, I mean, you can't beat any Randall part. So,
Nah.
All right, let's talk kind of the progression of your riding. So you went up to a couple camps, Black Diamond, learned a heap of tricks, as you would say. So when's your contest riding start, I guess? Are you doing some Australian contests over there, or is it still just free riding, having fun?
Well, we had local comps that we would all go to, and it was just absolute grassroots sort of stuff where you meet up with friends. And and that's how I kind of got into the sport. So like contest riding was, I don't know, you just turn up and you do whatever tricks. You didn't have a run at that point when it was that early. So I'd go up there and try and do whatever I could. But that would have been like 1999, 2000, something like that, when I started going and doing contests. And in the junior men, so there was Harley Clifford, I think, was already at those events in like under sixes or whatever, the under nines, whatever the kids division was. So he was already there because I used to coach him when he was like 7 or 8 years old. So he would have been there already. But it was just the absolute grassroots kind of stuff. Amber sort of turned up at the same comp. I think our comp might have been the exact same one when we started. So that's sort of how we got started in contests in Oz, and yeah, it was a really good scene back then as well. There was a lot of riders at the events. Now I think it's a lot lower. The number is a lot lower than they used to be, but you would have like 100 people at the events and stuff, and it was like people from under Harley Clifford's age, like 6 years old, up to whatever age, up into the dads. A lot of 30-year-olds and stuff. Which
really, wow.
You don't really get that in contests anymore because, you know, I think that middle class at the moment sort of being pushed out of the sport a little bit by boat prices. So normally you get all contests now and it's under 13s, and then there's a bit of a gap in age, and then you got the dads and mums riding. So, but it was good back then. It was a really good community.
Okay, interesting. So at any point, where are you picking up any sponsors, you know, in this first kind of few years doing?
My first sponsor was Wing. Yeah.
Wing wetsuit?
Amber was team manager.
Oh, she was?
Yeah, she sponsored me. Yeah, that was my first sponsor. It was Wing. So yeah, I used to get vests and stuff. I think I might have. I can't think if I waltzed in and got the full freebie deal to start with, or if it was wholesale or something for a bit. But yeah, no, Wing was my very first sponsor. Amber was team manager. I think that's what they were giving us something to do at the company at that point, because she was like in between school and doing college and stuff. So they were trying to keep it busy, I think. So yeah, she was team manager.
Okay.
But that was it, yeah.
Just that for a while. Just Wing wetsuits getting some.
Yeah, well, I was no one. I was doing a tantrum and a scarecrow at contests and stuff. Like I used to turn up to those events for, I don't know, a full season. Definitely the full first year, I'd turn up and get my ass handed to me.
Yeah.
Because it was like a really, really strong contingent of riders back then in that division. And it would have been in the US as well, I guess. But at that point, it was such a fresh new sport that most of the people coming through were a lot younger. So the junior men's division was stacked in Australia at that point. Like Chris O'Shea at that point was Australia's top junior at that point. Scotty Broom, John Henson, Dave Freeman. There was a lot of really, really good young riders. Troy Roker. And so I used to turn up. Dwayne Priestley, Brenton's older brother at that point, was in junior men. So there was no stress, no pressure.
So kind of getting dusted in those contests.
Yeah, I didn't care.
Just for fun, though. Just
like whatever. I'd turn up, and if I wouldn't make a final or anything. I was just cannon fodder in the event. But it was just cool. I enjoyed going up and just hanging out. It wasn't until the second season that I actually started doing anything.
So you mentioned Scarecrow. I want to hear about the first crowmobe you landed.
Yeah, you have done some research.
Oh, we're not even touching the tip right now. But.
Yeah, we had a Haynes signature, and we used to just fill it up with gas cans full of water. That's all we had. And yeah, I learned chromobes off the. I can't think if I did it off a straight wake or if I did it off the double up first. I don't know. Maybe you might even have the answer. I can't even remember. But I remember doing one, and actually, the first one I did was, I think, the one that we actually ran aground on. I definitely did one. I can't believe I could do chromobes off that wake now. I don't think I could do it now. But we ended up having this Haynes signature, and we're all the way up the end of the river in Nowra. Did a chromobe off the double up, and then we were way too far up, and there was a rock shelf, and just ran the thing aground after I landed it, but destroyed the transom of the boat and everything. But yeah, that was my first mob back in the day, trying to get chromobes and stuff done. But I started doing them off the straight wake, and I did one in front of Paul Boyd. Actually, this is probably the point that I kind of came through a little bit, and people started noticing me on the local river on Port Hacking, because Port Hacking was a real hotbed for the sport in Australia. It was like I'd say the Delta scene or the West Coast scene in the US and the port hacking, like very, very similar.
Okay.
That was like where the sport started and originated. It probably started at the exact same point on different sides of the world, which is kind of funny. But I ended up doing a crowmobe right in front of the dock where Paul Boyd is an OG was standing. And no one was doing mobes back in the day at that point. And I did a crowmobe. And I remember like landing it, stomping it. I knew exactly what I'd done too. I was like in my head, landed. I'm like, yes, right in front of everybody. And then I whip off into the dock to go say hi because I kind of knew them, kind of didn't. And I remember like in hindsight, Boydie was after the fact, Boydie was saying, he was going, who the hell is this kid? It's a chromobe, and no one had ever seen one in person before. So that was kind of where I started making a bit of a name for myself at that point. And then kind of got in tight with all the Hacko crew back then, which was really cool.
So keep walking through that progression, because you said, I mean, you get a crowmobe, obviously that's like no one else is doing that. No one's really seen that kind of in that area. So like what's the next, couple of years look like in terms of like sponsorship, contest wise, like how's that continue to progress for you?
Well, I sort of started riding a lot more with the Hacko crew back then. And that was a massive impact on me as a rider in general, because it was, like I said, it was very similar to the West Coast scene at that point. It was very, very, very style orientated. And we had guys like Reece Jordan, Marshall Harrington. They were sort of on the OG double up team with Nelson and Cordell and Colin Wright back in the day. And it was good because you kind of got a little bit of nurturing for the sport. I had no idea how to navigate any of it. No, my dad and sister as well was doing it as well. And so I would sort of go into a lot of the events, the local events that we were doing, and sort of went a little bit better and started, I think I might have won a state title or something like that, but was still like, I think at that point I might have got sponsored by Joby. It was my first ever board sponsor. That was through Amber as well, through Wing. They sort of teed it all up. And like, I really didn't make a big breakthrough, like a significant breakthrough until I was in pro. Like I kind of went my first year into pro in Australia. And that was really the first time that I kind of blew the doors open. I like won pro events sort of out of nowhere. Like no one was expecting it.
Yeah.
Because I remember I went on a trip with a couple of the friends that we rode with on the river a lot. And we rode every day for probably a week. And it was just insane. Like we'd go out and it was like 2 new tricks every set, 2 new tricks every set, 2 new tricks every set. And it was like all of a sudden, like in 1 week, it was wild to see riding go from like here to here. And I'd say that was like the big change, because like at that point, like I think we had the world titles that were in Sydney for IWWF in junior man, and I wanted to win that. I think I got second or third to Morgan Kraus, who's from South Africa, but still I was like an up and comer. I wasn't really that noticed, and it wasn't until I rode in the Australian Pro Tour stops, because we had the Australian Pro Tour at that point, and I was maybe making some finals and bits and pieces. But then the following year, I won the opening stop for the Australian Pro Tour, and that was sort of the start where I made like a bit of an impact and an inroad into the sport.
So after that win, I mean, are you getting paid by any sponsors at that point, or are you
don't reckon.
Just getting some boards?
I'd be surprised. Yeah, I think I was just getting boards. It would have been after this that it sort of snowballed a little bit more, because I won the opening stop of the Pro Tour, and then I got second, I think, because everyone was like, oh, yeah, see if you can do it again. I got second at the next one to Daniel, and it was like a big deal. I was like tied for first on the Australian Pro Tour, and it was like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then, but what happened then, the Australian Pro Tour is a super diverse series. It was really, really cool, because you'd have like an all-wake event, then it was kind of like a mixed one, and then there was like rail events, like specific rail events. And I sucked on rails. There was no cables, there was no nothing. Like I hadn't gotten any opportunity to hit rails. So anytime there was a rail event, I would barely make a final, because it was like 50% of the score, especially on the ride and slide events. It was actually more. There was like one, maybe 2 wake tricks and a double up. So I was sweet on that.
Yeah.
So I was doing like heel 7s and heel 9s and stuff off the double up like when I was young. But then on the rail,
It's my first time hitting this today.
Straight up. And then I might make it halfway along a flat bar or something. Like it was ridiculous. And like, so it was obviously like an Achilles heel. If I was going to make it in the sport, like I had to get a lot better at it. And everyone knew that I was awful on rails. And it wasn't until I got to the States, like my first season, that I went to O-dubs like every day, like religiously. So, but that would have been the start. As soon as I started doing well in that, and then after that, I won Asian X Games.
So I want to talk about that.
Yeah,
Asian
that was like the proper groundbreaking one. Like that was like a proper pro event. Like to win the Australian Pro Tour stop was sick, because we had like, I think at the opening stop we had like Watson was in the Australian Pro Tour stop. Like there were a bunch of big names. I think Lyman was out too. So it was a big deal like to have won it. But like Asian X Games was like the event that really put me on the map for sure. I came back from that and all of a sudden I went to a cable, Bly cable, and everyone's like, Dean Smith. And it was like, that was like the first time that I was like 100% people knew who I was in Australia.
So I walk through that Asian X Games because you won, right? So I wasn't really familiar with Asian X Games. I was obviously familiar with American X Games in LA and stuff like that.
It was a sick event.
Yeah, I mean, what's the venue like? Like, is all the big name riders there?
I've been talking to Corey Wilson about this for so long. There's this site, the Asian X Games I went to 2 and then it stopped. But the first one I went to was in Malaysia, and it was on this place called the Mines Resort, and this old tin mine, and there's like a PGA golf course along the side of it. And the event was held out of a hotel. I think it's actually called the Mines Resort. And it was an outrageous event. We'd be sitting there and there was like a massive lagoon-style pool that you would be hanging out in. And then you would step out of the lagoon, like sand pool, and it had like a bar in the middle of it, so you'd just be chilling at the bar. And then you would step out, take about 4 steps onto the dock where you board. You had a caddy, and they'd put your board on the dock with your rope and everything. And you're lounging, like you're hanging out on the dock, just in the pool rather, just chilling. And then you go ride. And there were these huge monitor lizards, like you have to kind of ollie over them when you were going into course, because I was sort of swimming really close to the shoreline. So as you got pulled off the dock, you had to kind of avoid these freaking dinosaurs in the water. And then you ride along this PGA golf course and turn around. It was perfect conditions. And then you'd finish off, whip back off, and go straight into the pool again and go straight in for margaritas. It was like the sickest event I've ever been to. And then, so I won that. And the winner back then, the winner of Asian X Games got the automatic invite to X Games.
Okay.
And that was like the huge draw card. Like it was I was going to say it sort of was. It was an absolute backdoor entry, right? Because everyone used to bust their ass trying to get into X Games. It was the hardest event to get into. And so I won X Games, and I remember I was there with Ike, and Jeff Wetherill was riding in that as well. And it came down to the double up between me and Jeff. Jeff had already ridden, and I had to hit my dub to 100% win the event. I think I did it was like a bit of back then it was like a clutch move. I did a hill 7 or something off the dub and won it. And I just remember Jeff was trying to be nice because he was like friends with me, but he was so pissy because he was trying to get the trying to get the X Games invite or whatever. And I was just the kid having a crack, never been to the States yet.
Okay, you hadn't been to the States at this point?
No. I'd never been to the US. And that was my first international event, and won Asian X Games, and it was massive. It was like, I mean, it's not X Games, but the media is exactly the same. Yeah. It was really, even now, after winning it, I lost count of the number of interviews I did after the event. Like, it was just different media things from all over the world. Like, it was crazy. And then, I had like the invite to X Games, and then less than a month, probably within 3 or 4 weeks later, we did Moomba. And then the winner of Moomba got the invite to US Masters. But Moomba at that point was not, it was on the decline. It used to be a big event for prior to this anyway. And then at this point, it was pretty much a demo. And there were meant to be 5 people in the event, but Daniel and Ike got disqualified for something that went on in the beer tent. And so we were now down to 3 for the event. And it was me, Phil Soven, and Travis Osborne in the final. Final. There was only 3 of us, but it was a demo, right? But it was weird because the winner of this demo still got the invite to US Masters. And I remember being on the dock, and Amber's dad actually came and tapped me on the shoulder because we knew it was a sideshow act. Wakeboarding was a bit of a sideshow act at Moomba at that point. I remember getting tapped on the shoulder by Rob, and he's like, just so you know, I know like you guys don't seem like you're taking this very serious, but the winner of this gets into US Masters. And I like didn't even really know what US Masters was.
Okay, so it wasn't this prestigious thing in your head that's like X Games, like
yeah. Well, I just didn't really. I knew it, but not really. To everyone, like to maybe to Phil who was there, he would have known, right? But for all I know, Phil was already in Masters. I don't remember. And then so I went and rode and won Moomba, and it was like a prop. I mean, it was a win. Like if you go back in the chronicles of all the results, it probably has me as the winner for Moomba that year, but it was only 3 of us.
They don't ask how, they ask how many.
Yeah. But it meant now that I had the invite to the 2 hardest events in the world to get into, and I'd never been to the States. And I was in uni at this point, in college, and I didn't know, I wasn't going anywhere. I was literally in the middle of studying. And I remember talking to Daniel Watkins, Josh Sanders, and they're like, well, you're going? I go, no, I'm not going. They go, what, you're not going to go to X Games? You're not doing any of it? I go, I'm studying. Like, what do you know? He goes, and they kind of got the shits with me because they're like, they didn't have an invite to X Games yet. And I was like foregoing my X Games invite. It was like almost disrespectful. And they were like at me about having to go to the US for the season. And then it wasn't until I finally like had a chat with my dad and stuff. I'm like, I don't know, maybe we'll go give it a crack. Like Amber had already done a season, well, not a full season at that point over there. She might have done half a season. I can't remember. She definitely did the year before me. So she'd already done it. I had a bit of a chat with her as well about the whole thing over there. And at that point, we're like, all right, we'll go give it a crack. And at that point, which was awesome as well, my best friend Scotty Broom, he was like, well, if you're going to go, I'm going to go as well. We'll have a crack together. So we sort of tried to prep everything. And then actually Michael Hancock, who's another friend of ours, at the last minute was like, oh, I'll come over at some point too. So it was very, very cool. But we didn't really, I was going to go over a full half a season earlier than those boys. They came over a little bit later. But I didn't know where I was going to stay, what I was going to do. And then we were talking to Daniel and Josh, and it was really funny because my dad was trying to work it all out properly because I was 18. I wasn't like a kid, but I was young. And they're like, oh, where is he going to stay? What are we going to do? And they're just like, oh, just put him on the plane. Like, whatever, he'll be sweet. They're like, what do you mean it'll be sweet? Like, what are you talking about? Like, just put him on the plane. Yeah, that'll be all sweet. And they were like, I remember Dad getting really annoyed by it. He's going, yeah, we need to figure out where he's staying. So I thought that I was going to be staying and living with Daniel Watkins for that year. So we planned all the flights down to a T. For the first year, everything was booked. Like now you book your flights 2 days out, whatever. But I had everything down as a schedule for the whole year because it was like a big deal. Every Pro Tour stop, I had to get the calendar out, got to fly in, fly out, do what I got to do. And then, so finally we flew out to the States for the first time and then got to the airport, and I thought I was living with Daniel, and because I only really knew Daniel and Josh. I didn't really know Ike. And I called Daniel because I was sitting there for like 45 minutes in pickup in Orlando. No one picked me up. And I'm like, where is everyone? Daniel's not even answering. And then he finally answers and he's like, oh yeah, just sit there and wait. Look for the big Hyperlight truck. Ike's picking you up. Okay. Okay, cool. So then Ike picks me up. He's got Jeff Here's truck and he's that big rep van. And then I get in the truck and Ike's like, yeah, you're living with me. And I was like, really? Like I had no idea. So then he tells me I'm moving in with him and Jeff here. And so for the first season I lived with Ike. And that was like sort of how it all spiraled. But really like it went from me being at school and then having a decent Australian season, winning an Australian Pro Tour stop. And there are a couple of other little satellite events that I won, but they weren't like big events or anything like that. But it went from like snowball probably within the space of a month. I went from being like going pretty well and as a junior, a young kid, and then all of a sudden went bang, bang, and then had the 2 invites to the biggest events in the world. It was wild.
It's super wild. I had no idea about any of that. So, I mean, I knew about the, X Games, getting the invite and all that stuff. So when you won those 2 events and you get the invites to go to the States, it's not in your head that like, I'm going to make a career out of wakeboarding, or I can make a career out of wakeboarding. It's like,
I didn't even know.
I'm
like,
in uni. Like
I was a month in, really. Like I was a month into any idea of this, right? Like went from hoping to, I mean, I always wanted to, like if you're doing something and trying to do it competitively, like you were taking it seriously, how far can you go with it? But I'd only just met guys. Like at that season, I'd met Watson and Shane, and they came out to Australia. And I remember it was actually just after I'd probably won the original Pro Tour stop, and they were trying to get me on LF actually. I'd forgotten all about this. I told Amber about this the other day. I hadn't even remembered this, but I remember like having conference calls with Don Wallace and stuff, and they were like, yeah, we've got to get this Australian kid on to LF, and then they just never called me back after we had and I'd completely forgotten about this. We must have had probably, I reckon I had 2 or 3 calls with Don, and then all of a sudden it was like radio silence. It was all sick. Yeah, we're going to do it. And then just sort of nothing happened. And then, but at that point, Joby had started paying me.
Okay,
so,
they had.
Yeah. So it was right around then. I think I'd won that event, a couple of events and stuff. And then when I told them I was going to the States, then they were like, yeah, you're on salary. So I was on like $500 a month or something like that, which was a big deal to me. And then I might have been on money from Rip Curl, maybe. I can't really remember, but yeah, but I think Joby would have been my first paying sponsor.
First one. Okay. But I mean, that is a big deal too. If you're especially going to make the move over, you'd be like, okay, am I going to get a job over in America? What's the deal here? Like,
well, I lived that whole season off my Asian X Games prize money.
How much was the Asian X Games? It had to be quite a bit.
15 grand.
Okay. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it was a big prize purse. So I had it, but I had it in cash. They paid you in cash. So I had an envelope full of money in my bedroom, and I just take money from it every day. And I wouldn't count it because I didn't want to know how quick it was going down. But I had an envelope of 15 grand on a bedside table or whatever. And if I needed food or whatever I needed, I would just take a hundy out of it. And that would be how that's how I bankrolled the whole first season. And that was like, it would probably happen the first 3 years. I had every year, every off season between the Australian season and the US season, I won a big event. And it was big prize money, whatever it was, World Cup stop, whatever. And I would go, I'm back. We
can do this another year.
Let's do the envelope again. And I had the envelope full of money. But the first year I just had an envelope, and I would just take from it. And yeah, it was hilarious. So that was how I bankrolled myself for the first year. I thought I'd be able to get through the season based on having $500 a month. And then I think actually Smith were paying me too. I was with Smith Eyewear. And then the 15 grand that I had. So
how much do you think your last name helped in the Smith deal?
Not much. Not a whole lot. No, they were good to me actually. I remember having my I was negotiating actually. I think I might have negotiated a new contract. I actually think Smith might have been paying me for a couple of seasons at this point. They got really heavily involved in Australia, and I was super lucky just in general. Because I know Amber didn't have the same sort of pathways as me, or even like Chris O or anyone. You have to go to the US to get your sponsors, right? But I was really lucky in that I sort of had sponsors coming out of Australia, which you normally wouldn't. Like I was on salary from Smith Eyewear in Australia, Ripco, an Australian company. Then we had Joby was filtered through Australia as well. So like all my earnings were coming out of there. So it worked quite good. But I remember having to negotiate my new Smith contract. And Ike was on Smith US at that point too. And I was like, I can't think why I got him to look at my contract. I was like, oh, can you have a look at something for me? Whatever it was. I'm just got to sign off on it. And I remember Ike looking at the my contract. And he goes, motherfucker. And he's like, goes and grabs his contract and starts looking over it. And I'm like sitting there and I go, no, what have I done? So like Ike worked out I was making more than him from Smith in Australia. And I was like, oh dude, he's going to be on the phone with Australia in about 10 minutes. And sure as hell, like Ike's freaking tried to get back. He was trying to get out of his US deal to get it back, circumvent it back through Australia. But yeah, they were a good sponsor for me back in the day. Like it helped me because I had like all these like sort of $500 a month sponsors. Like I don't think I was earning that much Smith, but it was like handy, right? And so I at least figured that I could feed myself and get through the season for at least the most part for the first year, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of negotiating sponsorships, I mean, was there a lot of negotiating you did? Because it sounds like that Smith was kind of early on, but like in terms of your career, were you someone who like actively negotiated different deals and stuff like that? I mean, was that
I didn't have a manager.
okay?
Is that what you mean?
I mean, yes and no. Yeah, because I feel like I talk to people nowadays, and it's like obviously totally different. But
Sure.
they're like, there's no negotiating anymore.
There's
It's
not
like,
a single. The only sponsor I could have gone to with a manager would have been Ripco.
Okay.
I'd have been laughed out of the office with anyone else. Seriously, like I mean,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
if I turned up to negotiate a Ronix contract back in the day with Paul O'Brien,
Fuck out of here.
get the fuck out of here, you idiot. Straight up, like he would have laughed me out of the room,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He goes, "What are you even doing here?" But Rip, like I was dealing with the same team manager as like Mick Fanning, like for Ripco.
Yeah.
And obviously Mick's negotiating significantly more zeros. So, but I don't think it would have been out of place for me to have had a manager for that. But
Yeah.
Ripco looked after me anyway. I wasn't concerned to be negotiating anyway.
Nickel and dime 'em or whatever. It's like we got a good thing going here.
Yeah, I was with, I was with Ripco for nearly 20 years.
Long time.
Yeah, it was unreal. And they, even after the fact, they kept me on when I'd retired, they kept me on as an ambassador and kept paying me. And it was like, they were just like, yeah, we know you're not doing anything, but
I like you.
yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I didn't have to really have any managers, and I just did all my own contract stuff.
Sounds like it worked out pretty well at least. So
Yeah.
we got a question from your sister.
Of course you do.
Hello, darling brother. It's me, your sister. So you've made some amazing memories in your time wakeboarding, from traveling around Australia, winning world titles, X Game medals, Rathy taking you 3 hours the wrong way on your trip to Brostock. But what moment would be more memorable for you? Sinking our family boat or trashing our dad's race car? Love you.
I love you, Uncle Dean.
Oh, so I mean, was the boat part of that? Is that what we touched on earlier with the crowmobe, or is that a different situation?
No, totally
Okay,
different.
so
No.
you're responsible for two boats.
Yeah,
going
I'm
down.
straight up. Well, I wasn't driving either of them. So the X5, we had a Mastercraft X5. We took it down to Lake Conjola to go ride with a bunch of crew, and the old flushing tap thing. You know, you leave the flushing tap open. Have you done that?
Flashing tap?
Flushing when you flush a
Oh,
boat.
yeah.
Don't forget to cross that flushing tapper, because we had the we ended up flushing the boat because it'd been in the water for a couple of days, so we flushed it when it was in the water, and then I didn't close it off again. So pressure, what ends up happening, come to find this out after the fact, but the as the boat, you'll get a little bit of water in, and the heavier it gets, the more pressure. So the further it sinks, faster the water starts coming in, faster it sinks again. Luckily, the boat was only sitting in probably 3 foot of water, so I was lucky. So
okay.
it was sunk, but not sunk. It
Not
was just
50 feet down.
no. We came down to go ride one morning, and we looked there, and the boat's like, I mean, it's freaking a foot over the floor, right? It's sunk, but not sunk. So we had to but we couldn't figure out what had happened, and then figure out the flushing tap was open. So we've had to get it all out, and that boat ended up being sweet. I can't think what we needed to get replaced in it. Obviously, it was
Maybe a few things.
yeah, it was
but
salt. It was salt water. Like it doesn't like salt water. So, but we had that boat for a good while after it too. That was a sick boat. That thing, that X5.
What year X5 was that?
01.
Okay.
It was like one of the most classical looking wake boats ever. It was that era of like the Nautiques. You know, you had the old Super Airs and had the obnoxiously tall towers and all that. It was back then.
I'll throw a pick into that because those old wake boats are sick, especially the.
Oh, dude, yeah. So, but that X5 was unreal. It was only one of two in Australia, because they just wake boats never really they had Malibus in Oz, and that was about it.
Okay.
So yeah, but we had that boat for a while after we'd sunk it. But the race car though, still not overly cool talking. My dad's still not cool talking about it. And
Well,
that's
if
20
he's
years
listening,
ago.
skip past this part.
20 years ago. Yeah, 20 years ago, I would have written it off. 39 now. Yeah, no, more.
You were less than 19?
Yeah, I reckon I might have been 17 when I wrote it off.
What car is it? Or was it, I should say?
So my dad, or our dad, Haley and I, our dad was a professional motor racing driver. And so he ran and drove in Toyota Team Australia. So now in Australia we've got V8 supercars. It's like NASCAR. But before NASCAR, it was just Australian Touring Car Championship. So I used to race in Bathurst and all sorts of stuff back then. And one of the cars that he raced in the series was this Toyota Corolla FX GT. And it won, like the exact car I rode off won, I think it won Bathurst in the 2 litre class. And it was a collector's item car. It was, I guess it doesn't matter now, it's written off, but it was completely illegal. 100% illegal on the road. Because it's like, it looked like a normal Corolla, but the FX GT had no side entry bars, everything in the doors, it's all carbon. Like it was designed to be more of a race car. But you weren't allowed them in Australia, it wouldn't pass road regs. So the old stamp over the VIN thing as an SX. Anyway, so it was registered in my dad's business. And anyway, he had a Toyota dealership. And it was all supercharged. Like it pulled like a V8. It was outrageous. And his son, his first car. And
this was your first car?
Yeah. He saved it for me for ages. He told me, this is going to be your car. You'll have the grey Corolla. And so I used to take it up to all the wakeboard comps and stuff, and we used to have it up there, and Amber, and we used to go cruise with the crew down the coast in it and stuff. And sort of Amber, whenever we listened to Dre 2001, just reminds us of the grey Corolla because it had subs in the back and all that. So I used to be pumping Still Dre or whatever in it. But it was an absolute weapon to drive. It had it was fun. I wasn't even driving stupid when I rode it off either. But at the time I had my girlfriend in the car, which was pretty wild. I was lucky. But yeah, so I ended up going up to drive. I was actually going to Black Diamond in the middle of the night. It was like, I don't know, at the time, you don't really think about when you're a kid, whether this is a good idea. It's like a 2-hour drive to get to Black Diamond. And it was like a last minute decision to go hang out with people because I knew that they were sitting around a campfire having beers and stuff up there. And I was like, I'm just going to go and drive 2 hours to Black Diamond. And my girlfriend at the time was like, she was going to come with me. And drove up along this road and ended up on the wrong side of the road. Like I'd fogged up mirrors and stuff and windows and trying to demist it all and drifted onto the wrong side. And the cars come around the other way and pretty much a head on and rode it off. But then it got picked up, and then they've looked at the car closely and realised that it is an FX GT. Like, because when you get the thing registered, you have to kind of know what you're looking at. Yeah. Now they've known, and my whole dad's business got audited by the it was.
That's a big deal.
It was huge, and my dad was 50-50 partner with someone else, kind of me and Cassidy, and I had no idea how unpopular I was up there with him. And I remember I'm the idiot son that's freaking written off the illegal car, registered to the business name. It was huge, and and it was a big deal. And actually, I had a really bad year, and then I actually towing Amber. I can't think if it was before or after, but I ended up driving. Amber was wakeboarding, and I actually ran over a kayaker and got his foot and everything. Yeah, it was like, this is all probably within 6 months.
That's a shitty year.
Yeah. I was an absolute clusterfuck. And then, so it wouldn't have been that long after, whether it was before or after it. But anyway, ran over a kayaker. He had to go surgery, put his foot together and stuff. We were driving pretty much the exact same problem. I was driving her a double up and couldn't see shit through the windscreen's all salt. And Amber was riding. And she's watching this kayaker, and I just never saw him. And then as I'm coming around, she's yelling out, and I'm like, "What are you yelling at?" And then I saw him at the last minute, and I see the kayak go boom straight underneath it, went straight over the top of him, and then had to he's trying to keep me calm while his foot's hanging off and stuff, and I'm I'm bad with blood and all that sort of stuff, so I'm hyperventilating and freaking in shock. He's trying to keep me calm. So yeah, that was all within the space of the boat probably wasn't far off it either. It was just, you have those when you're a dad and you're concerned about your teenage son. I was that son 100% when I was 17 because I probably sunk the boat, crashed the car, ran over someone in a boat. So it was, it was a big year. It would have been, I was in year 12. So yeah, it would have been 17.
Okay.
I was 17. Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
So thanks, Haley, for that.
She had up can worms with that one. Yeah. But then my dad, he ended up dry docking our boat not long after that as well.
As
Teflon.
What do you mean, punishment or something?
No. He had the boat on the trailer and put Teflon on the trailer on the slips and downhill boat ramp, and the boat.
Oh, dry docking, you mean it slid off?
Straight off the trailer onto the
Oh,
boat ramp as
jeez.
well. So yeah, we had a good go of a few boats.
Wow, there's a lot to take in right there.
That was a
Dean.
big year.
That
That would
was
have been
a big year, Dean.
2002, typical teen for sure. Maybe not typical. Not everyone really runs over people in their boat, but
Nope.
yeah.
Maybe Spotter is the spot for you. You know,
Yeah.
back then, you know.
Oh,
say
dude,
go pilot.
I just remember my dad just being like brutal, just being like, pull your shit together.
I mean, yeah,
like,
that's a tough one.
I just remember it. But yeah, running over someone, yeah.
All right.
Bad.
Well, I think it's time we dive into the LF'n Wheel of Questions presented by Liquid Force.
The LF'n Wheel of Questions.
Okay, let's go.
So
Right on.
if you can reach that, go ahead and grab it down.
Right on.
Should pop right off there. Yeah.
Sick.
Set it on the table
Show
and
it to
then
the table.
yeah.
Show it to the camera.
So we got a few things on here. We got last wake movie you watched. Got some contest trivia. Got make a movie, which you'll get to pick. You know, if that lands on that, who you'd put in a movie these days. What else we got? Steal a trick, and then greatest of all time.
Righto. Let's
So give her a spin. See what we get here. Last wake movie you watched. So
Oh, I do know. Relentless.
really,
Yeah, we watched it not long ago.
no shit.
Yeah, I would have been right. I would have been probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. I can't think. We were sitting there, and my young mate, my young boy, he was like, wanted to watch a wakeboard movie. I don't even know how he started bringing up wakeboard movies or watching him, and watched Relentless all the way through. It was awesome. I hadn't watched Relentless in ages, and it was like one of my all-time favorite movies.
That's sick.
Yeah.
That's much more recent than I would have imagined.
No, straight
is
up.
cool.
Yeah, I hadn't watched it. I mean, DVD and everything. Yeah, we got the DVD player out, and
That's
like,
the way to do it. Get the
yeah.
popcorn out.
Yeah, we watched and fully watched Relentless. I think I tagged Watson. I was like, took a video of it and sent Watson a video because I was watching his opening section. But yeah, 100%. I watched Relentless.
Love it.
That movie got an absolute hammering as well when I was younger.
On the replays.
Oh, dude,
Yes,
that's
spinning it
a
back.
proper goated movie. That one.
Yeah, definitely a good one to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna let you get off the hook here though. We got to do contest trivia. So I got 2 questions from contests back in the day. I'm not sure how you are with remembering what happened and who won and where things were, but
We'll see.
we're gonna find out.
Yeah.
It's only 2. In 2014, who won the World Cup in Linyi, China? I don't know. if I said that right.
I can't even. I know it was there. Phil was there. So was Andrew. So was Harley. God, it's gonna be Phil or Harley. I'm gonna say Phil because it was rough water.
It was Harley. Yep.
Phil
Harley
came
had a
second.
heater of a year in 2014.
Yeah, I know, but it was always the events that Phil did really well against Harley were always rough
When
water.
it was rough water.
Yeah, because Phil would do the same run. Like Phil couldn't beat Harley's best run, but Phil could do the same run
Worst conditions.
off a jet ski in 4-foot chop.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In 2012, where was Wakestock held?
Wasn't in the original spot. Wakestock Canada or Wakestock Canada. I was in, what was the name of the place? Collingwood.
Yep, it was in Collingwood.
Yep.
There you go, 1 for 2. And I mean, you kind of almost got that first one.
Yeah, it wasn't. Wakestock was never the same.
That's what I have heard.
Dude, anyone that went to the original one, it was just, it was the best event ever held. Like you got like Wake Open and all those events, but like for the sheer crowd and format that you used to have for Wakestock, like it was just unbelievable.
What was the format?
Well, you had the rails, right? So Pat Panakos used to build the course. So you'd have like 2 different events. You'd have the normal event, and the rails were in the event too. And then you have a straight rail event. So like Colin Harrington and Rafi and all those boys would crush it, right? Because they were hands down the best on rails there. But Pat each year would try and outdo himself because like Pat wanted it to be gnarly and like hard and legit. And I remember like we went the first year and they were kind of like wider rails and stuff, and they were still big and all that. I remember might have been the last year that they had it, and the rails were seriously like that wide, and they were like 100 foot long, and it was and it was like the ollies were chest high. And then you had to go over that onto something else. And it was just so gnarly. And I remember watching especially Rathy on the high ollie end. It was seriously chest high. And he ollie on backlit, straight on, boom, perfect. And it was one of the most gangster things I've ever seen done. Because, like, it was scary just trying to eye the ollie up. And he was, like, taking the absolute piss out of it and backlipping on. So... But that whole event was so sick. It was just a massive crowd. Format was rad with the rails. And it was just because you had the party and stuff there too, or the music festival. So, like, we'd be partying with, like, De La Soul and freaking Q-Tip at the event and stuff. Oh, dude, it was real funny. Been at bars and stuff, having cocktails and shit with Q-Tip.
So what was the proximity of, like, the riding to the crowds at Wakestock Canada?
Feet. I mean, you've probably got a bank about that far between the rail and the water, between the actual handrail and the water, and then so you're probably 15 feet away. Yeah. Like if you fell in the water on the rail, like you're almost you and I. Yeah, and they're just going, haha, you fell off, whatever it was. But one of the craziest things at that event, Randall rode that year too. Would have been the comeback year for Randall, whatever that year was that he rode contests.
First comeback.
Yeah, whatever. But it was when he came back and started doing Pro Tour and stuff. Yeah. And I, for the life of me, can't remember what year it would have been. But anyway, maybe like 09 or something, 08. Probably transgression period, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, but he went to Wakestock, and it's not a very Randall Harris friendly layout for the course because, like, the rails are overtly in the way. Like, you have to hit them, right? And Randall, I mean, he's not going to hit them at 28 mile an hour, right? And so it just didn't fit his running very well. And he got out of sync where you would normally be. So you would be hitting a rail and then doing a wake trick that way and that way. But because he had to do things out of sync in the wrong direction, normally, like, the dock used to basically come straight out. And I remember, like, it was like a big deal because Rusty was like the local Canadian superhero, right? So Rusty's first trick, he used to do like a crail glide, newt glide over the top of the dock. And it was like a big thing, like the commentators would be losing it.
Local
and Rusty,
legend,
yeah. So that's how far up the dock kind of came. So you would hit the rails, the last of the rails, and then your last trick would be going away from the dock, right? Randall got out of sync. And his last trick was coming back towards the dock. And I can't think what trick he'd done at this point, but we're all on the dock. Everyone's geeking out watching him ride. And he's like, stomped the trick, and everyone's like, yeah. And I feel like I was standing next to Ollie Jerome at this point, and it was all happening in slow motion like a car crash. And we sort of started watching him, like, lining up his next trick, and we're looking at the space that he's got. We're, like, looking at everything around, and we're going, he's definitely doing another trick. We watch him edge in. He's coming. He's definitely still coming. And then we're all of a sudden going, everyone starts going, Randall, like, yelling at the dock, everyone off the dock. And Randall's come hammering in, lands right where the dock is pretty much. And he realizes what he's done and has to, like, let go of the rope. And he's gone flying straight up through the crowd, through the fence. Like, dude, it was wild. And we're all standing on the dock. I thought Randall had been killed.
He's probably going 50 miles an hour too.
Oh, he was on. He seriously, like, the timing of it. He, like, landed it, and as he landed, he realized where he was. Like, if he hadn't let go, he 100% would have been smoked by pillars because it was like a bar area and stuff, a building. You would have hit the building, and he went flying straight up the bank into the crowd. So that's, like, how close everything was. But it was like, oh, dude, we had to go fetch him and, like, make sure he was all good and put the fencing back up. But he went straight through everyone up into the crowd.
Yeah. Unreal.
Yeah.
It wasn't a Randall proof course.
No, that was the only thing, because it was like you kind of had to be in sync and no one's riding a 92-foot row. Yep. And it was pretty funny. But they had, like, the Oakley pool set up then too. Yeah. It's when all the companies were in the industry, so it was a sick event.
Yeah. And I think that I mean, I've always harped on, I think the coolest thing about those events was the proximity to the crowd. Like, it's so cool to be right next to it. Like,
dude, well, the other event was in Canada as well, as the Pro Tour stop in Kelowna.
Yeah.
Like, that was as close, but it was like when everyone talks about rough water and stuff now, I'm like, you guys don't have a clue what rough water is. Like Kelowna, they had a Kelowna Pro Tour stop. It was on Lake Okanagan, and proper open water, and there's like people cruising around in freaking billionaire yachts and stuff. It was that rough at the event on one of the days. A guy's gone to land a seaplane, come in, and it was that rough that the guys ended up, this is while the event's running, and ended up bumping around and stacked his seaplane and freaking sunk at the event. It was like insanely rough. And that was like the other event. That was probably between the two, I would say, like Wakestock and well, that one was called Wake Fest in Kelowna. That were the two biggest crowds. But Kelowna was like just an absolute shit show to ride in. It was like you would do one trick off the dock and then hit a rail, and then you'd have the fun box, and then you would have, after that, it was whatever you can do, man. Like you'd have, if you could get 3 tricks in, good luck, but just don't fall off. So you do like a one-weight crow or something, like you just can't even get across the wakes, and then freaking do a freaking tantrum off a roller or something. Dude, it was insane. So then you turn around, come back, and then at this point you're like, just, I don't know, let's just stand there or do a one-wake 360. It was bonkers. So then you'd come in, it was like, you're talking of like proper chop like that. Like it's just unrideable. Then you'd hit the fun box and then the flat bar, but then you'd have your Hail Mary was your last trick. And that's basically what separated everyone's runs, was this one wake trick before the dock. So it was like an absolute lottery. Like it was that rough. I remember Shane blew his knee out at that event because the fun box lifted up out of the water. It was like rocking that hard. And his board went under the dock, and he shot out and freaking blew his knee out. So it was like, it was insane. But like the crowd and like was the whole way around. You had, it's probably, other than Moomba, to be the biggest crowd that I've ever seen at a wakeboard event. And same thing, all the music festival and stuff. So it was really, really, back then it was sick. Like there was just so many cool events and stuff. And like I said, you go hanging out and you're at the bar again with all these musicians and stuff and whatever, Wu-Tang at the bar again. And it was just fun. It was different.
Wu-Tang is for the kids.
That's
I love
it.
that. That's awesome. I'd love to see, possibly events get that close to the spectators again, because I think that's what makes it really cool.
like that.
Yeah, Moomba is like in the river,
Moomba's
right? And
wild.
It's just
yeah, it's
not wide. Like that's not a wide situation.
No, it's like wild. Like just how many people are there? Like I said, they're right there on the shoreline.
Yeah.
Like you go to Moomba, it'd be the biggest crowd in water ski wakeboarding. It's not even close. And I think when people come out for the first time to see it, it's just standing room all the way along the bank, and you can hear people yelling your name, and so that's definitely the biggest crowd. So yeah, we just don't have as many events anymore with crowds, which is sad. So
I guess, you seem like you're kind of into talking about it. What do you think would help to kind of bring some of that energy back?
I don't know. It starts getting all philosophical when you talk about it, right? But I just don't know what it is that to bring people back, because like I know it's not like people aren't trying, right? Like the Pro Tour is not what it used to be, crowd wise, and they've done things like incorporating FMX back into it and things like that. But I just don't know if it's the social media generation making them less interested in being at an event now. They look at it all every day. I've seen you every day for the last year. Why do I have to go and meet you? I don't know. But it used to be like an exciting thing. Like you used to, if you're a fan, like, this was me too. When I used to go to events before I was like competing properly in pro, and you'd go there and you'd want to meet, like I'd want to meet Daniel Watkins. He's going to go sign a reef thing for me. Like he's going to sign whatever it is. And you go and meet him. It was like a big deal. And I just don't see it as much anymore. And I don't know why. It's the riding level in contests and stuff is unbelievable.
And they're going huge. Like, so if you're close to that, it's very spectacular to watch.
Exactly. Like, boat events are a lot harder. Like, unless you are as close as you are at Moomba or Wakestock or Wakefest, then it can be a little bit more difficult to appreciate. And it's like all the way out there. I'm all the way here. I get that. Park events can be a little bit easier.
Yeah, you can throw a 2-tower in a lot of places,
Yeah, or a normal cable park. You jump to a cable park and you just set it up. Everyone's just right there, right? So it is different, but why there's not as many spectators, I don't know, because the sport's also grown. Like boat sales are at record numbers.
There's a lot of people on the water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't really get why people aren't as interested to go watch the events anymore. It's strange to me as well. So I can come up with a heap of problems. I just don't know what the solutions are.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you can point to this is the problem, this is the problem, but how you get people to be as involved in it again, I don't know. I used to always, I brought up a Instagram post ages ago, because I always liked rails in boat comps. And
Once you figured them out, right? Once you got
yeah. When I was better at them and I was good, I was all sweet. But I thought the rails in themselves changed the events up a little bit. Maybe aesthetically, looking at there's more going on, maybe easy to appreciate. I'm not sure, but I don't know if that was something that as soon as that went away, maybe it became a little too sanitized, going up,
stale,
back.
kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, like I don't know how you would reincorporate rails if that's going to be an answer to it all, but back into contest, because it's so separated now. Like the two sides of the sport are so different, and you got fins on boat boards and stuff. That was like the thing back in the day with having rails in boat comps and stuff. You had you make sure you had strong metal fins, because if you had lost a fin, which happened a lot, if you had fiberglass fin, it was a pain in the ass. You knew you lost your fin, you had to go back to the dock, freaking screw a new fin onto your board, right? Like. So then you got to be careful. Oh, I can't press too hard.
Yeah.
So then it's like, are we really doing it right? Because like obviously you go and watch what park riding's like now, rail riding, and how different it is and stuff. And it's just like, well, is it even relevant to be doing that now? But what it was good having rails in contests is it mixed everything up, and it made, even though it was the same rails at every event, you could make a different course. So the runs,
it's an X factor in the course. That's something that,
and you needed course management too. So there was a lot more strategy around it all. Like you had to, if there was certain areas where there was a shallow section, but then the rails here, you had to gauge the risk versus reward of putting a hard trick leading into a rail. Because if you fell, then you missed a rail hit. So there's a lot of strategy around it.
And that's all storyline stuff too that you can talk about and create
So I don't know if it is a factor if I'm overplaying it, but I don't know. It's just one of those things that I think, like I said, it's not like people aren't trying at the moment. Like I haven't been on tour for a while now, and I can see the effort like that Supra and everyone are going to right now to try and make it all work. But yeah, like the riding numbers are down. Like we used to have the opening Pro Tour stop for the season. We'd have 80 riders. Because you had to qualify for top 40. And it was some of the hardest riding I've ever done. You would have to, top 10 were guaranteed, and then you'd have 80 riders trying to get in to that last 30 spots. And you had heaps of satellite riders like that are what you call, let's say, calling regional, that normally don't compete, that might just come and try and get on tour. And at that point, like they were really good. There was a lot more of a level playing field, because you'd get guys like, I'm trying to throw some, like Sean O'Brien was a rider that would always turn up to an event and he could beat you 100%.
Yeah.
Like he was really, really good. There was like Brent Starr from up northwest. There was like a lot. Adam Wensink was even really good. Like Wensink was a really good rider back then too. Like, trying to throw random names out, but like Gabe Lucas was another one from Texas. Like he would ride some of the events, but then turn up, and like there was a lot of really, really good riders to try and get into that top 30. And I think from a storyline point of view too, to watch, it's more it's better to watch. Like
everybody roots for an underdog.
Exciting. It's more exciting. Like when you've got a list of 70 riders or whatever it is, 80 riders, and you're a spectator, it's way better to watch because there's a bigger story to the event, right? So, and you just got every single person you can think of. It's like Ricky G is a rider. Ricky G would come out to ride Randall, like Gator. Like there were a lot of riders back then that was still kind of riding, and the numbers were really, really big. So now on the Pro Tour, you've only got the 16. So I don't know if from a spectator standpoint, maybe that's not enough, but there's a lot of young kids coming through at the moment, moving from the juniors into the pros that'll probably inflate that. So maybe once you got like 30 riders again, 40 riders, then it would make it from a spectator standpoint a lot better to watch as more of a storyline during the day.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
I think bringing rail back would be sweet, and make it a metal rail, so then it doesn't really matter if it's a metal pipe.
But then what do you do? Like if you break your fins, and you can't press. That's the problem.
Dude, you're not gonna. Nobody's pressing. I mean, come on.
Well,
Nobody's
that's the point,
pressing
though.
on a boat board.
That's the problem, though, man. Like, and then if you're only going to be doing that, it's so sanitized. Like, it's just. I don't want to say it looks goofy, but like the rail riding is just so like you watch Trent Stuckey or anyone go ride in on park and then go watch. Oh yeah, what was the rail hit? Back lip. You do anything? No.
Well, you could do hard way back 4. Like, there's a lot of things you could do.
You could do that.
Like,
you could,
I mean?
yeah. You could do that, but you're not going to be able to like.
You're not going to press
out.
but you're not going to press on a boat board anyways. So like, I think we could just throw that out with the bathwater.
Sure, but that's also one of my issues.
The one thing you want to see.
Yeah, exactly. That's fair. So, but yeah, you are correct.
I think some form of X factor, whether it's a rail or something,
it made the strategy in the event so much better.
Yeah,
and it also, like, it brought in a greater variety of riders back then too. Like when there was the transition from when boat riding still had rails and all that sort of stuff, like you had guys, Ollie Jerome, like JD, like all these guys would be like, I'm not saying like obviously Ollie was an absolute monster and so was JD on boat, but like it elevated a bunch of guys that might have been weaker than other guys on boat. Like, and it made it more of a level playing field. Like it brought in a greater variety. Like right now, if we did that, like guys like Gunther and would be killing it on tour, it would change up the hierarchy for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, I think that was one of the cool things as well. Like just having greater variety of riders. Each event was different. You'd have greater strategy around it all.
I'd be curious to talk to the guys like on the tour right now, because I guarantee almost all of them would not want to see a rail come back, because then they'd have to incorporate that into their riding, right? Like they're so dialed on just the wakes right now. Like the big boat guys aren't riding park really, right? So
yeah,
like,
I mean,
like Corey Tunis and Nick Rapper, like are they gonna?
They do not practice rails. No.
Yeah. So would they be like, I don't want that, or would they be like, hey, if it's gonna help? I don't know.
Probably. I mean, if you're being real, I'm not gonna put words in Nick's mouth or even Corey's, but like I'm imagining they wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
Like
this is my assumption. I could be wrong.
Their bread and butter is
the wake,
right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go do my double in tens, and then, so yeah, probably not. But I don't know. From a spectator standpoint, I genuinely thought it looked better. And I thought it was more exciting to even ride into.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's chew on that one for a little bit. Pro Tour maybe.
Yeah.
So let's talk some more contests. Tokyo Pro. Would you say this is the biggest win you ever had?
Peak. Yeah. It was so sick. It was amazing, man. Like I'd come out obviously from being a dad. I'd been a dad for 2 weeks. Oh, yeah, probably. It wouldn't have been far off 2 weeks. We had Will, and then probably 4 days later, I had to fly out to the States for US Nationals. And I had a pretty different mindset at that point. I felt real loose. Like I don't want to say I had no pressure, but I just felt like real loose in myself, and I was like feeling good. And we came into Nationals, and I had a mate of mine from Australia that had come over, completely unrelated to wakeboarding. He just hadn't been to the US with me before and came over and visited. So he was like in the boat with me riding that week leading up to Nationals. So probably like mellowed me out a bit as well. And I just felt good. I remember riding with Phil that week as well. This is prior to Tokyo Pro with US Nationals. And I went into US Nationals, and everyone was like joking about, Dino with dad power coming into this, because Nationals is the first event that after I'd been a dad. And I'd probably say that actual event at US Nationals was the most consistent that I'd ever ridden at a wakeboard event ever. I don't think I fell at the event.
Dad strength is real.
Yeah, and so everyone was like joking and making, whatever, JD, because he was already a dad. But I was on fire at this Nationals, and then went into the event, went into like each round, and I had new tricks that I'd been doing prior to when I went back for Will's birth, and then sort of was the first time that I'd started incorporating them back into my contest run. And so like all of a sudden my run looked different from what it did 3 months prior. And I remember like going toe to toe with Harley, and it was like the first, like, it's so hard to go up to, like, it took Harley falling or something going wrong. Harley had to mess up really for you to beat him.
Yeah.
Like I beat him a few times. I had a really funny track record against Harley and Phil. Like I had this knack of being able to beat them for some reason. Like obviously not often, but like, no, obviously they were the two hardest people to beat. And if anyone had a chance of beating him for whatever reason, it seemed to be me. It was really funny. But it was one of the times where I went toe to toe with Harley in the final, and he beat me by 0.25, and he won US Nationals. I got second, and it was so close. And I thought I'd knocked him off, and I was like, I can't believe first out of the gates, and I've like gone straight up to, like, Harley put down his hardest run, I put down my hardest run, and it was like really, really close. And I was like, oh, damn, that would have been rad to have like first out of the gates to have like knocked him off, got the US national title. But I was still stoked, just because of how I'd ridden the whole event. And then went to Tokyo, and then winning that, because I went back to back, I was consecutive weekends, and then to do that with Amber, because Amber flew from Australia straight to Tokyo and met us there. And so I hadn't seen Will in a couple of weeks. Like I'd left 4 days after he was born, so it was pretty emotional just having him there, and then to like win it and have him on stage. It was like I hadn't really felt any, like, even winning worlds and all that. Like I hadn't really felt that level of like, I can't even think of the word for it, but it was just like I felt just. It was pure happiness, right? Like I just felt content with the world. It was this weird feeling like I'd done it. I'd done where can I go from here? Even like I said, winning all these other events and stuff, but this was like the absolute pinnacle to be able to do that and have my son on stage. It's like a new phase of my life. And it was cool as well, because like when you go into that stage, especially with the age that I was at, you like, all the young kids are still coming through, and I was significantly older than everybody else on tour. And it was also cool to know that I was like still competitive. Like I'm still one of the top dogs in competitions and stuff like that. I think one of the guys that used to do the wakeboard site worked out that it was the oldest ever pro men's winner in history.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He brought up a stat, and I beat Darren Shapiro by half a year or something. It was a really funny statistic that he sent me. So yeah, it was really cool to be able to know, one, that I was like still here, still doing good, because everyone's wondering. I had to fly back. I don't think I missed many events. I think I missed a pro tour stop or two, maybe, when I was back in Australia. So everyone's like wondering if Dean's done, yada yada yada. And I like came back, had a smoking run.
I'm not fucking leaving.
Yeah, exactly, man. And then I had a smoking run at US Nationals. Like I said, it was probably one of my best ever contest runs. US Nationals was probably my best ever contest run. Like really thinking back, and I didn't even win. It's just Harley's being Harley. And then went to Tokyo Pro. It was a rough water event and everything, so it was a tough event to ride in. But to win that, it's like it was I guess it was like validating too. Like I'm still here, still doing it, not going anywhere. So it was good.
I love that. I just put that photo in Amber's podcast. I'll put it again in this one, but it was just a great photo. You holding the baby.
Yeah, man. It was emotional. It was seriously emotional. It was very cool. And I had it was cool because I think you can have, I don't think I got it a whole lot, but I'm sure like guys like Harley and Phil that win a lot, you get people going up and it's like the congratulatory thing, but there's probably people going like, oh yeah, you freaking won again. Fucking, oh yeah, nice way. But like, I had, when I won, maybe it's because like I'm more of an underdog or whatever, and I was always the boom or bust rider on tour, and so when I won, people were genuinely happy. So like it was really cool, like people coming up and like hugging me, and it was like every
genuinely stoked, excited for you.
So stoked, man. And it was like it's such a tight crew on tour and everyone that rides. So having everyone like JD and like I think that was the last time Phil was ever on a podium at a wakeboard event too. And so like Phil's a close friend of mine. And so it was cool being on the podium with Phil. I think it was Phil and JD actually. They were the other two. They got second and third. So like it was really cool having everyone there and like being genuinely stoked and like making a big deal out of it. And like, yeah, it was sick. It was like it was definitely the peak of my career.
So, speaking of, you said you were getting a little bit older at that point, obviously. And you competed into your 30s, which 30s, that's...
33, I think I was.
Yeah, 33 when you hung it up. Were there any PEDs involved in your training regimen towards the end there?
PEDs?
Yeah. I mean, you had some HGH, some testosterone.
No. It was great. I was a late bloomer, which is the crazy thing. Like, normally you come through as a junior, right? And you're like, you can tell that, you know, they're on. Like, if guys like Jimmy LaRich and Harley and guys came out immediately out of juniors, Steele, whoever, came out of junior men's and immediately were like top 3 or whatever. Like, they were in finals and doing that. My first year, I had my ass handed to me on Pro Tour. We used to call it the Sunday Club. So I remember turning up to my first Pro Tour stop at O-Dubs, and it was actually really strange. I remember I was signing in, and they were like, "Oh, who are you?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm Dean Smith." And they're like, "Oh, you're the new guy." And I was like, and it was like, everyone that was registering me. It was like Priscilla is still doing. I think she's still doing tour.
I think so.
Yeah, she's been there forever. But yeah, Priscilla, and then there was Jennifer Ellis, and everyone was like, "Oh, the new guy." So I was like, it was this weird hype that I was coming over from Australia, and this is the new Australian guy, and he's gonna, shake things up or whatever. And I didn't realize that until the first event, and because then even when I had to ride, I had to go through qualifying at the Pro Tour stop, and I had people that were like, "Oh, we're gonna need to come and watch Dean ride." Because it's like a big deal, the Aussie kid, one Asian X and all that. He's coming over and he's going to ride. And I think I was in JD's heat, my very first. Funny things you remember, eh? I think in my first heat that I ever rode in, I remember watching JD ride. But it was the same thing, rails. There were rails in the course. I was fucked. And I had no concept of really putting a run together either. So I don't think I even got through the first round. I think everyone turned up to watch me ride. I did a few wake tricks and everyone was like, "Oh, he's good," but then did nothing. And then it was called the Sunday Club for the whole year, and that's what they used to call them, the Dodgy Boys, all the Aussie guys. So it was Daniel, Josh, Ike, Greg Falzon. It was nicknamed at the Sunday Club. And if you're in the Sunday Club is when you didn't get into Sunday, and your job was to sit on the cooler the whole day on Sunday and hand beers out. So I kept not getting through, because this is before any of my other mates were there, like Scotty Broom and all that. So it was just me, and I kept not getting through. I'd get knocked out in the first round at every event. So I was president of the Sunday Club. That was what it was. So I'd have to sit on the cooler and drink beer and hand beers out to everybody. So every time someone would get knocked out, the cooler would be sitting at the end of the course, and I'd have to be sitting on it and have to hand beers out. Because it was like back then, it was like kind of like the rookie deal. You get the rookie slapped. I used to get rookie slapped by people and stuff, and it was like you can't do the hazing thing anymore. But I don't think I made a Sunday until the last event of the year. Didn't even get through a round, not one, from memory. And then finally made it through to a quarterfinal. I might have even made it through 2 rounds at the very last event that I rode in, made it to a semi-final, and that was it. And I finished 822nd on tour or something. And then, and so it was hard. Like I made 0 impact for the first year on tour, 0. But people knew who I was, whatever. And then the second year was pretty much the same. I moved in with Ike again, did the same deal. FYI, if Ike ever comes over, you need to get Ike on this because it will be the most viewed podcast you'll ever do, by the way. Brett Eisenhower.
That is a heavy claim. I love it.
Ike. And anyone, it's one of those if you know, you know kind of things. If you get Ike on here, I promise you it'll be the most viewed, listened to podcast you'll ever do. Anyway, so I lived with Ike and did the same thing. And I made a slightly bigger impact the second year. Made it through to a couple of Sundays. I was a little bit more consistent, but still, like, I might have been maybe I was top 20, maybe. But guys that were, like, coming through at the same point as me, like JD, JD was a rookie the same year I was a rookie. And JD he won a Pro Tour stop in his first year, won Kelowna. So I was way behind everybody else, right? Where they were at. And I remember like talking to Daniel and Ike at that point, and they were like, but then I go back to Australia and toast Daniel and toast Ike in Australian events. Like we'd go back again, and I'm back to being Dean, the phenom kid that's going to go over and take over the world in the US again. So it was like weird, and whether it was nerves or whatever it was, but like I still hadn't really clicked for me in the US. I couldn't really get it done. Then at the end of that season, I think I had a decent result. I think it was I might have got second at a World Cup stop in Singapore. I think it might have been that year. But like it was a big event and everyone was there, so it was like a big deal for me. Like I pulled it together and did all right. But still I'd go back and then I'd win the Australian Pro Tour again. I won the Australian Pro Tour run, I think I won 3 out of 4 stops. Yeah. Like crushed it. And then won a bunch of other. I won Planet X Slam Jam that year in Australia. Like went through, crushed the Australian season, come back completely mediocre in the US again. So I would be like 20 at this point and still haven't really. Like I'm going good. I'm starting to make money, but I'm really not living up to what everyone thought I was going to be doing, right? And then it was like 06 was my 3rd year, and I'd decided I was going back to uni. I'd quit wakeboarding. And I'm done. I'm just gonna go and go back to uni and I don't know, normal life, whatever. Yeah. And then I remember sitting through a lecture that year because I went home and that was it. And I came over here rather for a little bit. I did US Masters and a few Pro Tour stops, and I went and lived with a friend of mine named Scotty Mackey. And it was he thought the same thing. He was just coming over for fun. So we like lived together with this other girl that everyone knows, Jana Waring. And we lived with Jana. And we were here to party. That was it. Like nothing else. Like this was a blowout year. Like we knew it was going to be a blowout year. Because I was like, look, I had a couple of years a go at it. I'm not really getting where I thought I was going to be.
You're still getting paid at this point though from
I was, yeah. But like you're talking like bits and pieces. Yeah. Like it was nothing crazy. And then, and we were downtown every night. It was insane, dude. Like we looked like real bad alcoholics and shit that year. I remember like we would turn up to like Watkins' house, like D-Dubs, and Chriso was living with D-Dubs at that point. And me and Scotty Mackey would be like at a different nightclub every night downtown. And then we would go straight from wherever we crashed that night to Daniel's. We'd leave my board and boots, and so would Scotty. And we'd turn up and we look like a train wreck. Same clothes, and they had like Chriso and Scotty and Daniel are just laughing at us. But that year, I actually was probably the first year that my riding started to go through the roof, which is not crazy.
Treat your body like shit, and you'll be a little bit better that year.
It was funny. I actually started riding really well that year, and I know, which was hilarious because I remember like this one year. It's actually a segue into a funny story. But this year we were hopeless. Like it was very fun, but we didn't really care. Like we were like, whatever. This is a fun year, just to go over and ride and just enjoy it, whatever. But I was only over for probably 3 months, I reckon. But we needed a car, and we didn't have a car at this point, and we were just like getting cabs and lifts from people everywhere. And I was making we're making a little bit of money, but we're pretty much broke. It was the first year that I'd ever gone to the US without winning a big event with the envelope full of money. Yeah. So I didn't have the envelope full of money. So I really didn't have that much money to get down. But when we would go downtown, it really wouldn't cost us much because we knew all the bar owners and bartenders or whatever. But we like finally, after like being there for how many weeks, we were like woke up in another house after partying again. We're like, dude, we got to put our shit together. Like this is fun. We're a train wreck right now. And we're like, we need to go rent a car so we can like go and buy a car. Like we need to buy a car.
I was going to ask. I talked to Amber and she's like, talk about renting a car to buy a car.
Oh, yeah. So this is that story. So then we were going, we need to go rent a car so we can drive around Orlando and get a car. And we were so hungover. And I don't know how they even let us rent a car. So we went down to near the airport to go rent a car so we could go pull our shit together. As we're renting it, we were just like, couldn't even open our eyes with our hungover. And then we were like, yeah, just the cheapest car you've got, whatever. yep, no worries. And going to get the car and the paperwork sorted. And I happened to like flip over pages and stuff. And I'm like, you can rent Hummers? And I'm looking at Scotty, and you go, oh yeah, you can rent Hummers here. I'm like now, like we can leave here with a H2 Hummer. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, we need a Hummer. Like how much is it? How much is the Hummer? And it was outrageous. It was like $800 a day or something stupid. And like we were broke. I had no money. Like neither did Scotty. But we were like, this was our Hail Mary. We needed to do this, get this car to go rent it. But at this point, we went straight back to where we were the previous day in our minds for sure. And we're like, yeah, we need a Hummer right now. Anyway, I went back. They didn't have it, but they had like this murdered out Escalade or something, whatever it was. So we get this Escalade and we've handed over a credit card and scanned it for $800 for the day or whatever it was. And we're like, we are back. So then we drive out of this rental car place with this tricked out Escalade. And the first thing we go, we're going to go over and see Josh Sanders. So we pull over to Josh's place and we go straight there and pull into the driveway and start beeping the horn. All I remember is like Josh coming out and like poking his head out, looking out the door at us. And we're all sitting there in the car like this. And then he looks at us and goes back inside. And then he comes out with a camera, a camcorder. He's like, yeah, boys. Because like back in the day, that's like the dodgy boys. That's how they used to roll, right? And the Aussies had like this reputation. So he was like, yes, Dino and Scotty are like still living the dream over here, still how we used to roll. So anyway, we ended up driving the Escalade or whatever we had around downtown, doing loops around Orlando for maybe an hour at most or something. And then we're like, should we go downtown? Yeah. So we drove straight downtown and then parked it in whichever garage it was, and then straight back on the cycle again with Josh. So then we end up partying all night and then went back to Josh's house and crashed on his couch. Woke up at like 10 o'clock or something, 10:30, maybe even later, because I remember waking up and it was already past the return time for the car. And I'm like, oh no, like, this sucks. We have to pay the freaking return fee. And then we're like looking at Scotty, Mackie, and Josh. I'm like, do you guys remember where we parked it? We had no idea what parking lot. We couldn't remember what parking lot it was in, so we had to go downtown, find whatever parking lot it was in down there. Finally found whichever parking lot, managed to get the car, return it back to freaking whatever it was, Avis or whatever we'd gotten it from. And then at that point, we're down about like $1,500, still don't have a car, still broke and still hungover. Like had achieved nothing for the whole day, dude. And it was like, oh, and we're twice as depressed now. Like we had
You doubled down on
we doubled down on ourselves so hard. But then in the end, we managed to find like this old, like an $800 Volvo or something. And we were back in the game once we had that. But like, which Scotty actually rode off that year. Forgot what side of the road he was driving on in America. Drove into oncoming traffic. Yeah, I was already back in Australia at that point. So yeah, we ended up. It was like this kind of like a fun year that year. Like it was just an absolute blowout. It was very funny, but like I had no real intentions that I'd be back the following year at all. And then I went to uni, and then I remember sitting in like a lecture and getting texts from all the crew in the States. I remember like sitting there going like, what am I doing here? Like looking around like I could be in Orlando like right now. So then I remember like basically like having this shake up. I remember like talking to my dad about it. I'm like, I'm resigning from uni. Like I've done this semester. I'm going to go back. And I remember I had this turning point where I went from being a complete train wreck for that start of the year, going to the US and just partying and being, what was the nightclub at Taboo downtown every night and whatever it was. And then I remember like getting a PT and got probably up until that point about as fit as I'd ever been. And I was at the gym heaps. I was strong, like, and that was coming in from like September through till December. And it might have been actually, I don't think I'd won the Australian Pro Tour at this point. I think I was competitive up until then. But I remember like I'd gotten fit and and everyone sort of knew that I was like training again.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to Daniel, and Daniel leading into it, he goes, and he remember he was like, I mean, Daniel used to do mind games and stuff at events and stuff, but leading into it, but Daniel was like, you're going to win the Pro Tour this year. And because he's like, I've never seen you like this ever, like fired up and all that. And that was the year I won the Australian Pro Tour for the first time. And I trained my ass off, like in the gym, like I was fit, I was riding good. I was like fired up, like, let's do this. I'm going back to the States. We're going to have a proper crack when I go back this year. So that was like a bit of a turning point from moving then. But like I was already like 21 or 22. So like now kids these days, like you're having a crack in pro at like 18. And if you're 22 or 23 or whatever, you're already starting to like look past, you know, if you haven't done anything at this point, you got to move on, right? So yeah, we moved up. That was the year we moved into Parks' house after that. We moved in there and lived with it was like Aussie Refugee Camp Mark II, and lived with like 10 other Aussies in there and just rode our asses off for the whole year. And that was the first year that I sort of started making consistent semis and bits and pieces at that point, and was like, and that would have been the year that my riding changed, because everyone's like, you have like this certain type of riding style, and that was the year that my riding style changed. Don't really know how or when, but like it was that year. I started just trying tricks into the flats and stuff.
So you mean going bigger?
Yeah.
Big, yeah.
Yeah. I filmed for a movie called Aussiness that year. It was an Australian movie, which is actually probably one of my best video parts still to this date. I don't know how to get hold of it. But it was like, I remember putting this section together, and it was a bunch of tricks that I'd just learnt that year, which I remember doing like mute and nose roll to blinds into the flats. I'd started doing back fives and heel sevens into the flat. So like it was just, I don't know, I just wasn't really like a rhyme or reason. I just started enjoying riding like it. And that was like that year would have been 07, would have been the year that I started changing things up and like started riding a little bit different.
Okay.
But yeah, would have been like from there. So like really I was a late bloomer. Like I was like 22 or 20, probably 22 years old before I started really making it in the US.
Sounded like you almost needed that little reset of like, come to Orlando, not be so like hardcore about winning contests and shit. Like, oh, I'm going to have fun, going to party, probably wakeboard a little bit. And go back to uni and be like, oh, I don't really want to do this anymore. Like,
it was a bit of a shake up.
Yeah.
Like to go back and win the Australian Pro Tour and stuff was like a big deal. Like that was a massive deal. Like that last stop was actually unreal of the Australian Pro Tour that year. Weird segue, but I might have won the opening 2 stops or something like that. And it was always myself, Daniel, and Jeff Wetherill that were like the 3 that were winning the Australian Pro Tour. And Daniel was hyper competitive about it. He was hyper competitive anyway. He was like pretty funny to ride against. He was real massive with mind games and stuff. He'd talk to you at the events and stuff. And you knew, and he's a friend, but you knew exactly
shit.
You knew exactly what he was doing too. Like just it wasn't even like hope you fall or anything. Talking to you when he knows you don't want to be spoken to. Out of it, you know, in the zone. And he'd just be talking. And you knew exactly what he was doing. But so he was really, really, I think, mostly competitive about the Australian Tour because he was such an integral part of getting that up and running too, right? It was like his deal. He's in Australia. He was top dog. This is before Harley would come through, so it was like his domain kind of thing. So then I ended up pushing him all the way through, and the third stop, I shat the bed. And I can't think what I'd come in the event, but basically Daniel really only had to turn up to the last stop to win the Pro Tour. And they'd done all the media prior to that stop for him winning. So even before the last stop, they'd done everything. All the interviews about what it means for him to win his 3rd Australian Pro Tour title and all that sort of stuff. And mathematically, the only way for me to win was Daniel, because it was head-to-head. Daniel had to lose in the first round, and I had to win the event. And that was the only mathematical way that I could win the Pro Tour. So we go to the stop, and it was a rough water event on the Brisbane River in Brizzy. And then Daniel was against Gabe Lucas. and falls twice in his first pass and is out in the first round. And I'm sitting there, and I remember Ike coming up to me and started pumping me up. He's like, Dino, this is it. Fucking fire up. Like, and he was like, super.
The door's open.
No, he's like, fucking own it. Like, this is it.
Yeah.
Like, this is in your hands to do this right now. And I still had to win. And it was like a stacked event, rough water, everything. And I remember Daniel was the most angry I've ever seen Daniel at an event. Walked off, threw his board. Like, he was fuming that he'd fallen and cooked it in the first round.
The one thing he couldn't do.
And all he had to do was get through that first round.
Yeah.
And he didn't have to do anything because it was rough water. He could have freaking front rolled and crowed his way up the freaking river and he would have been sweet, right? But I can't even remember what his run was. But anyway. And then I had to get through one round at a time. And I remember Ike coming down and he'd be like, one down. And I'm like, fired up. And I was like this, sitting headphones on the whole time because I was like that fired up and just, I had to stay in the zone. And then my turn to ride again, get through that one. Boom. Ike's 2 down. And I think I had to get through 4 rounds, I think. And got through. And ended up being Gabe Lucas in the final with me as well because he beat Daniel.
Yeah.
And I remember like get through the round and it was head to head and beat him. And it was like pandemonium. It was like kind of like the same sort of deal like I said, where everyone was stoked, but it was like lifted up on the dock. Like it was unbelievable because like I said, Daniel had already done all the media for him winning the tour and stuff leading into it. Like there was just no chance that he was going to go out in the first round and I was going to win the event. And it happened. And it was like this unbelievable situation. Like it was probably one of the coolest events for me anyway, obviously that I'd ever had. Like, I mean, that's up there with Tokyo Pro and Worlds and all that for sure. Because it was like a big moment for me, like after falling out and then coming back in and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it was big. So it was coming through all that and then being all fired up and stuff and coming back to the US was massive. But yeah, I think 07 would have been the start and then 08. 08 was the first year that I started winning events.
Yeah.
On like a proper World Series stage.
So that's cool because that's like a perfect storybook like ending. Like you can't draw that up. Daniel falling twice.
It was wild.
And then the guy who beat him going all the way to the finals and you having this only like sick.
It was insane.
I love that. Love that stuff.
Yeah.
So you mentioned back 7 though earlier towards the beginning of that story. How much money have you made from the back 7?
Oh, dude, I got checks to prove it too. Oh, you got Henshaw's back 7. Henshaw's back 7's worth a lot. We had a joke about this, about the tricks that have the most value. But I kept winning $1,000. Henshaw.
I think I saw an Instagram pic. It was just like,
yeah, it was just my stack of checks.
Yeah.
It was the same trick that at the kicker event. I used to pay for my trip every time we turn up and do the backside 7 off the kicker, and that thing was bulletproof. That thing was going nowhere. And then so like my back 7, Henshaw won a heap off his back 7. Danny's heel 9 won a lot of money for him. So, but yeah, my back 7's won a significant amount of money for me over the years as well.
hit me with an estimate. What are you thinking? I mean, $1,000. How many are you thinking?
I didn't lose one. Like, I mean, they had this.
Back 7 comes out, checks mine.
Well, I mean, you could add them up pretty easily, right? I mean, you have you have a kicker event at 7 events a year.
Yep.
I was doing it for 7 or 8 years? I don't know. So what's that? It's like 50 something grand. Like if you had to work that out, let's say conservatively you'd go like, let's say it's 6 events a year they had the kicker on it, and then I did 7 years worth. Like I pretty much won every single kicker event for like 7 years. Like Chad, if I fell, then maybe Chad or someone would win, or Adam E would ride in it sometimes. But like that was pretty much
that B7.
I was like, I'd turn up and I'd just be like, "You want to hand me the check now or later? Let's do this." But like, so you'd add that up, and like that's probably, man, like $1,000 at $6 grand. Yeah, just got to be worth freaking at least 40 grand or something.
That's a high paying trick right there, or high value trick, I should say.
Yeah, like and it was so easy for me.
So I did bring up PEDs for a reason. Do you consider?
Oh yeah, that was a big segue.
We're
back to PEDs.
Well, this is good. This is good though. Do you consider beer to be a PED?
It's like spinach for Popeye for me. I'm Australian, man. It's like
because I honestly, I don't do it anymore, but like when I was snowboarding, I would have a tall boy. If I was trying to go out and do a trick, I'd be like, all right,
I shouldn't say this, but like
a couple soda pops.
Yeah, so it wasn't until I used to have a Dan a fair bit with Danny Half, and it wasn't until he was the one that pointed it out, and he'd go like, Dino, want to go for a ride? And I'm like, yeah, I'll get some fuel, and then without fail, I get a 6-pack, and it was almost like a impulse purchase for me at that point. I would get and I don't know, you're on the lake, beautiful day, like I want a beer.
Yeah,
it's freaking sick out there, like. I don't know. And then I would sit there and be the first thing, be filling up and then crack the beer. I said, want a beer? And he goes, oh, not yet. Not until after a ride. And it wasn't until like he pointed it out. He goes, how often do you think you pretty much every single time you come over, you have a 6-pack of beer to go riding? And I'm like, really? And he goes, literally every single time. And it was one of those moments that I was like, yeah, I guess I do. And it was like, yeah, I was like, you go free riding and it's like the optimal amounts, like that beer and a half. And then the second half of the beer, of that second beer is for after you ride. Exactly. And that's the exact amount. It's optimal. I was down to a formula. So Dan was the first person to point out that I would basically get a 6-pack of beer every single time I would go over to his house.
Oh, it's a nice gesture too.
Anywhere to ride.
Other guys in the boat crack a beer too, so that's a good.
I'm Australian.
It's a good omen.
That's what we do.
Yeah, Popeye for spinach. Or spinach for Popeye. I like that. Something a little bit more serious actually. I talked to Amber about when the women were no longer on the tour, and I talked about the women's reactions to that. I'm curious on the men's side of things, like what the chatter was amongst the guys when that decision was made.
Well, they were friends. I mean, they were friends. Like, I don't know, we travel with them all. Like, I mean, at that point, I don't know if Amber and I were already together. I think we were when the tour was gone. So, like, it's massive for me, like, not having my partner on tour with me anymore. And then, like I was just hanging out with Beck Ainge, like, Beck's, like, friends, like, everyone's, like, it's our crew, right? So, not having them on tour was like, I don't know, you don't have your crew on tour anymore. So, it was bummed. Like, to not have them all with you is the same as anyone else. So it's seeing him now, like at least there's equal pay for a lot more of them now. There's a better opportunities for a lot more of the girls coming through, and like having Amber as she's been one of the biggest advocates. Like she fought for that more than, I mean, maybe not more than people know, but I believe more than anyone even knows. Like she really threw herself out there at a time when the pushback was significantly, like it's a way different culture and environment around it now. It was way different back then. Like it was, a lot of the girls were mocked, and it was way different. And through all that, Amber was like the one that was like pushing and trying to make the difference. And I know that at that point too, she always felt frustrated because she always felt like she was I think she felt like she was doing it alone a lot, and she was trying to make all these inroads and make it all happen and stuff. So to have her, like you've spoken to her longer, you get a pretty quick idea of how passionate she is about it all, right? And so it was like the pushback and stuff. She did articles in mags. It was just disappointing that she was putting the effort in and really getting nowhere, considering that she was, well, for me, she was a bigger name than me in the sport. And she's not getting the recognition, to be able to go and compete like I was.
Yeah.
I was going out there and riding, and her side of the trophy cabinet's significantly bigger than mine. There's a way bigger line for the autographs for her than me. So, like, it was hard for her to sort of wrangle around that she felt like she'd been let down by the entire industry, especially like at that point too. A lot of the girls been dropped by boat companies and board companies and stuff like that. So, it seems like it's finally coming back around over the last 5 years. Probably, I wouldn't even say 10.
Oh, it's very recent for sure.
5
Somewhat
years.
Recent, yeah. Which,
yeah,
it's good.
That. Yeah, and then having now strong girls like Megs, like to be on the front lines as well.
Jamie Lapina, Zara.
Jamie Lapina, Zara, like, it's like, it's on the wall now, Copycats Club. Like there's a lot more there for them to have a platform and voice. So, it's good. Like, obviously proud that she's my wife, but like, see the impact and the foundation she laid for all that was significant.
Yeah, definitely. So I think this is a good segue into a segment called Deserve Some Love, which is presented by Driftline. Best boardies in the game. They got a wetsuit liner in there, so it'll give you a little bit more protection. Keeps you warm on those cold summer mornings or the spring and fall.
Butt checks are savage.
Help with the butt checks quite a bit. Use code GRAB15 to get 15% off. Link in the show notes. But deserve some love's segment to just kind of give love to someone that maybe didn't get the recognition they deserved.
Ooh,
Whether
I like
that
this.
it could be
Oh, dude,
rider.
I've got one off the top of my head. It's really funny. I was talking about him in the car on the way here with Beck Gange. Tino Centauri. Straight off the top of my head. I don't think people know how good he was because he won lots. He was a king of wake. The dude was a gangster. He was so good. Like, we used to ride. He lived on Lake Hiawassee the year we lived with Parks. In Parks' house, not with Parks. So we rode with Tino every day. And we would do this thing called actually, you know what? I'll do a two-way. I'm going to do a tie because this ties in really, really well with these two riders. So we used to do this thing called the Eeny, Meeny, Money, Mo Cup on Hiawassee. And it would be me, Tino, Scotty Broom, Watson sometimes would come out and do the Eeny, Money, Mo Cup. Sometimes Chad, Mitch Langfield, Troy Mackey. And we would do pull out names out of a hat kind of deal, head to head, and you had to do your contest run up and back, and we would just sit there drinking beers, and it was like contest settings, head to head, and the crew in the boat had to judge who won, and we would go head to head and move through into the final. Almost every single time was Mitch and Tino. You couldn't beat them. Like, they were so good. Mitch Langfield and was at that point and was what Mitch really could and should have been what Harley is now. And I'm not saying it's like for any reason on Mitch, but like he injured, all sorts of stuff. There's a pretty good argument to say that at one point in time, Mitch Langfield was the best boat rider and park rider in the world at the same time. I'm trying to think of anyone since then that has been able to do that. Like Raf has been there. Gunther's close, but I mean,
there might have been a year there.
Not disrespect Gunther. I don't think there's a point that he's been the best boat rider. Like, he's right there, but there's always been like Corey Tunison or a Harley Clifford. Like, you know, like it's so hard to be at that level. But like Gunther might have been like second or third best boat rider in the world. But like there was a point where Mitch Langfield was just unbelievable. And he was like everybody's favorite rail rider. It was like he was the one that was out at the projects, and he was like doing the dirtiest nose presses before anyone was sort of doing that sort of stuff. And like, so I would say and then going back to Tino, when you watch Tino ride, man, like I just don't think anyone really knows how good he was, man. Like, he was unbelievable to watch ride. And he would obviously win the one King Awake and stuff. So it's funny to say he doesn't get the plaudits that he deserves. But like, when people look back on riders and stuff now, I just don't hear him brought up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's a legend. Like, legend. Like, I mean, and they talk about like Hall of Fame kind of stuff, and like, I never hear him get brought up in those conversations, man. Yeah. And I just don't really know. I don't know if it's because he left the industry so abruptly, so people are like out of sight, out of mind, for sure. But like, we used to watch those two ride head to head when we used to do the Eeny, Miny, Mo Cup. And it was like video game stuff. Like, it was like better than what we would see with Pro Tour. Like, we would watch them because Mitch at that point was doing stuff Mitch was doing back sevens into the flats back then. He was the first person I ever saw do it. And he was doing like off the wakes back then. He would be doing like a blind Pete. He'd be doing like a crow 5, whirly 5, freaking back 7, toe back 5, toe. Like, it was like stuff now that holds up now. Like, if you did that run now, Mitch is going to be in the final of a freaking Pro Tour stop. Like, it's crazy. And that was in 2007. And then same with Tino. Like, Tino's runs back then would have been holding up. So, I would say my two would be those two for that reason. Eeny, Meeny, Mo Cup, OGs.
I love that answer.
Tino Centauri and Mitch Langfield.
Tino Centauri is also just a badass name.
Yeah.
We're talking Wings, a cool last name. Tino Centauri.
Well, we had the original J-Star Joby graphic when he was with Joby, with that company, whatever it was at that point. It switched to J-Star.
Yeah.
And he had like a like a mafia graphic on there. He hated it. I remember he like got it. His board was called. Oh, this is going to bother me because I wrote it.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. This is in the back of my mind right now. Anyway, whatever his pro model board at J-Star was called, and it had a pretty dope graphic on it. And he hated the graphic because I think it was milking his name.
Sure,
but
yeah.
Brett Hagen, who was running J-Star back then, he did it on purpose because he thought Tino Centauri was a badass name as well. But
It is.
yeah, that J-Star team back then was freaking
Stacked, dude.
super stacked. There's like a team movie that was meant to be in the works for that team because we had at that point Lyman, Tino, Rusty, Ike, me, Jack Blodgett, Jeff Weatherall, like stacked.
Yeah.
Super duper stacked. And we were going to do this team movie around all that. It's a funny segue into this as well. And remember we went up to Glide, Oregon, up to for Jack Blodgett's parents' place. We're going to do our team shoot up there. And Tino, there was this, it was a fairly dysfunctional team though. It was a very funny team, but for a few reasons. But Tino had been made to go on that trip by Brett Hagen. Tino had decided, I think he'd agreed or he'd already signed, whether you can sign pre-contracts, I don't really know, but he'd gone to Liquid Force. And he'd been made by J-Star to go on the trip, or we're not going to pay you. You're coming, we don't care. And it was almost like to spite Tino.
Yeah.
So Tino had the shits that he'd been made to go on this trip up there, even though he wasn't even on the team. So he was in a bit of a shitty mood the whole time he was up there. And I knew at this point I was friendly with Tino. I wouldn't say I was like mates with him or anything at this point. But like I was like friendly. It was like early days. I'd only really just met him, would have been 2004 or something. Anyway, he and Daniel Lovett was there as well. I don't know if I should tell him this story with names in it, but anyway.
Too late.
Too late now. Anyway, whatever. So we had this dysfunctional thing where for whatever reason, I feel bad telling about the names, but anyway, Tino and Lovett.
I'll bleep it out.
Whatever. Yeah, you can put it in, whatever. I'm sure they'll laugh about it at this point, whatever. I hope they do. But Lovett and Tino were like grinding for whatever reason on this trip. I don't know if you remember Shovett Lovett, the wake skater. He was the first person ever to do a wake-to-wake kickflip. He was a good wake skater. And I don't know why there was friction between them, but there was. Anyway, and it was nothing crazy. It was like something at breakfast, and we kind of had to like push him aside and stuff, and we didn't think anything really was going to come of it. Anyway, like freaking stupid school kids, the moment the school teacher leaves the classroom, Hagen has to go and get supplies from in town for dinner or something. As soon as he leaves, you two are having a boxing match. So we went and got boxing gloves. We were going to try and get a set for him, and we set like fully like you would do like in a not a classroom, in a freaking schoolyard. And we set a full boxing ring up with because it was pretty much at night with the spotlights and from the cars, the headlights in on there. But we could only find one set of gloves. So I think Lovett's one of them's left-handed. I don't know. I can't remember. I think Lovett's left-handed and Tino's right. One each. So anyway, we gave him a boxing glove each. And we're sitting there. We're like, you two are going to fight this out right now. Anyway, so come to find out right after this has all happened, Lovett's now an MMA fighter, like proper. He fights in Orlando. Fucking shout out to Lovett. Anyway, so he's a proper fighter. So we had no idea whether he could fight then or couldn't. I like promise you Tino can't fight.
This is over from the start.
Yeah, well, we didn't know, right?
Nobody knew. But
anyway, as like so we watch it, and all I remember is being around there and watching Lovett pump fake Tino. We're obviously not going to punch him bare knuckled, but pump fakes him and then just cracks him square in the nose. Hagen comes back. Tino's got blood all over him, like broken nose, man. Like Hagen comes back. He's like, "What the fuck? Like, are you guys kidding me?" Like, it was just so funny. It was like, and it was almost like defined basically the whole team at that point. Like it was like this. We always regarded ourselves as like the B team misfits to Hyperlite. Like we were kind of like, and it was like I think Rusty was already looking to move to Hyperlite at that point too, and like everyone was moving on pretty much. But like we were meant to be filming a team movie at this shoot. That never happened. Like Ike has somewhere in a vault from Jack Blodgett has got a video part that. Because I ended up laying down like a double half cab roll there and something else and a bunch of tricks that he hadn't gotten on film before. So he was just like, he was so pissed when the movie wasn't going to be made. So he's like talking to Jack Blodgett and like best Ike impression with a cigarette. He's like, I can make that movie still. I'm going to come around. We're going to edit that video together. So he's like going over to freaking Jack's and making Jack edit this section together that never got released. So I've been hit Jack up for a few times about it. Like, dude, we need to release this Ike section that's from back in the day with the double half cab roll. It's sitting in a hard drive somewhere, dude. But we need that. That was like the start of like when everyone kind of peeled off J-Star and like wouldn't have been that much longer that I left and went to Ronix and all that. And J-Star basically was, it was pretty funny though. That was the most dysfunctional team shoot ever.
I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Sorry, Love It and Tino for that stuff.
They're boxing it out. I mean, no, come on, nothing wrong with that. I think I'm gonna take a piss now.
Yeah, cool. So
after Dean and I took a quick break, we were talking off camera about Phil Soven, and Dean had some funny stories he wanted to tell, so we just kind of jumped right into recording. So that's where this is picking up about Dean talking about Phil Soven.
This is what I was alluding to before when we were like talking about this just off camera a second ago. So when we were doing Wake Brothers, it would have been right around then. I don't know, maybe it's reputation goes before me, but I like throwing hand grenades out on social media.
You're talking to the king of hand grenades,
so
we're all right.
Yeah. So I used to like, it's honestly started when I would start trolling Phil on social media. And it all started from this one post on my socials, and I'll find it for you. Where I ended up getting through. It was actually the year I won weight games, and to get to the final, I had to beat Phil. And for this, the day before the event was on, I put this post up, and it was a picture of a frog in a sandwich. And I just posted it and I go, what I'm eating for lunch tomorrow. And it was just something simple like that. And everyone was like going, oh, Dino's like whatever, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, beat Phil like in the semi-final, obviously to get through. And then I backed it up the next photo with a new photo of a guy eating a frog like that. And I was like, you know what? It doesn't taste that bad. And it started from there, right? And kept going. So at that point, Phil was like, it genuinely rattled him, like 100%. And because it started off as a joke and it wasn't even intentional to be like strategic. I was just taking the piss. Like he's pretty easy to take the piss out of, and he's a friend, so I didn't care. And so I would post all this shit on here. Yes, I'm into him now. It was a really funny time. And so that was the original. So that was the original post that I put up.
Okay, frog sandwich.
Yeah, the frog sandwich. And then it was like that, just like eating that. So then...
That's his nickname for people who are not familiar with Phil.
Froggy Soven, right. So then I started just getting creative on Photoshop. So then I like did this shit. I like put a thing up and it was like objects in the mirror further than they appear. Like and like I photoshopped Phil in the mirror of a car and stuff and like just tagged him and like just mental disintegration, right? So then I ended up, we had the next stop in Atlanta. And this was actually piss funny because that was the opening stop of the King of Wake series that year, the World Series. So I had the yellow jersey it was a joke. Like I turned up, I still have it. Like Harley and all the crew normally wear them and don't take it that a big a deal. But I'm like the leader of the World Series right now. I've got the yellow bib, got my name on it and stuff. I was like, you idiots have let this happen. I was like looking at all the other competitors. I'm like, what have you guys done? Are you guys kidding me right now? Like you've given me the yellow bib. Like what is wrong with you? Anyway, so then I turn up to the next event in Atlanta and beat Phil again. And now he's like properly in like...
Well, now you're talking shit and you're backing it up.
Yeah.
And it's not a fluke.
No, but I know that it's rattling him.
Yeah.
So I was like, if he didn't react to it, I probably would have stopped. But it's just the fact that he bit. And I'm like, oh, dude. Because he kept trying to do post back and stuff and whatever. So then I beat him in the next event. And he got... so that meant that he finished equal 7th for the event. Because I think I only made final. I didn't win or anything. But I beat him. And he came equal 7th. And I don't know if you remember, there's I'll call it a famous photo, I guess. But it's a photo of after Phil won the Pro Tour. And it was, funnily enough, in Atlanta as well. And he's in on the back of the boat. And it's him going like... Have you seen that? Yeah.
I'll put that in. If I can find it, I'll put that in.
Yeah. So anyway, I photoshopped another 6 fingers onto his hand.
Put that in.
Yeah.
I'll put all these in.
Yeah, so I photoshopped all his fingers in. And it went on and on, man. And it was like...
That's one of the best ones.
It became really funny, man. And the funny thing was, after that event as well, he had a dummy spit after he cooked it in the riders area. And...
What's a dummy spit?
Like, because he had a shit ride. He's
mad.
Got super mad, freaking threw his board into the freaking...
Well, a hissy fit, yeah.
Proper. Yeah, like a big one.
Yeah.
Like, absolute moron. And then he's... But he had a bit of a thing going on. I don't know, him and Mastercraft. He didn't like the boat or something. So Mastercraft immediately, the guys have all come down because they wanted to see what he did. Because they wanted him off tour. It was pretty funny.
Kick him off the tour.
Straight up. Yeah, it was serious. Anyway, he had a bit of a dummy spit, like a big one. Anyway, because he said stuff about Mastercraft in the riders area and it was like a lot of people because it was like Sunday. People everywhere, fans, everything. So he got freaking suspended for one stop for the Pro Tour. I've never even heard of anything like this at a wakeboard Pro Tour. And I was just like, after the first 2 events of what I've got all this content for social media trolling, and then he gets suspended. I'm just like, no way. Like the gods are speaking to me right now. So then I'm just like, this is like the jokes are writing themselves now. So the next stop was in California. And so then he got suspended from the California stop. So then the next social media post, I just found like a greeting card from California, like a postcard, and said greetings from California, and go, wish you were here, Phil. Like it was something like that, just like ragging on him. And it was at this point, Wake Brothers, I think, was on as well. So no one really, behind the scenes, no one really knew if we were like friends or not. And they thought we hated each other. Yeah. So I'm getting like hate mail from like Phil Soven fans, like in my DMs and stuff and in my comments and stuff. And I remember like, I'm sitting on a plane, and half the time it's funny because I might even be sitting next to Phil on the flight and just freaking making fun of him. But there'd be like, there was one in particular, and the comments have all deleted. Whoever it was, I don't even remember, it was a long time ago, but deleted all the comments. And he's like, you haven't done even half of the things that Phil's done in his career. You're a joke, Dean Smith. And like, just like getting it, like, just like, it was so funny. I'm like crying, laughing, like all these hyper freaking Phil Soven fans just sending me all this hate mail and stuff until there'd be like someone else that had finally gotten in on the comments and they were like, you know, they're friends, right? And it was like, so then these 2 people start arguing my comments about it all. And it was like this spiraling
If he's
thing.
His friend, he wouldn't be posting these
Oh,
memes.
it went on and on. And then eventually I remember going back to have a look at it one day and it had been deleted. But it was very, very, very funny. Yeah.
That's wild. That's too funny. I remember seeing the 7 fingers or the
Yeah.
I didn't know the froggy saying.
I used to give Phil some, but like we were friends and I used to ride with him, but he's, like I said, used to make fun of him.
Oh my God, that's too good. Okay, well, we were talking about some famous pro riders. I got a Patreon question here from none other than Ollie Derome. So if you guys are interested in supporting the podcast, joining the Patreon is the best way to do that. You get to see who the guests are early, and you can ask them a question. Everyone who joins gets a sticker pack shipped out to them. So it's a little perk there. So we got one from Ollie, and he wants you to impersonate these riders.
Oh, God.
Rusty.
No, I can't. No, I'm not going to.
You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. This is coming from Ollie. This isn't even from me.
Ah, dude.
Chad.
No, I'm not meant to make fun of
And
people.
then Bob. You're not even making fun of him. Impersonating someone is not making fun of him.
I know. And who else?
Bob Soven.
Bob?
I put Bob Soven in.
I can't do it. I mean, I've never done a Bob Soven.
Well, who's a good third then?
I used to be famous for my Ike impression.
Okay, we'll do that one then.
I kind of did one before.
Pretend I'm asking you, hey, how'd your run go?
With Ike?
All three of them.
Oh, God. I'll start off. Ike one's the easiest one because he used to do this thing where he would have the exact same run at every event and act like he didn't know what the run was going to be. Ike's run never changed in a decade. And you'd be sitting there and he would tap you on the shoulder. And and you were trying to get in the zone or whatever. And as soon as he'd tap you, you'd be like, oh, fuck, Ike again. And you'd know exactly what it is. And he'd have his cigarette and he'd be standing behind you or whatever, and he'd have his dart, and he'd be sitting there going like, S-bend, half cab roll, whirly bird, come up onto the rail, go back, leap up onto there, Pete Rose, switch roll to blind. And he'd come, he's sitting there, and then at this point, you could step back, and he would keep talking. He wouldn't even know you'd walked away. And because he'd be like, oh, yeah, it's the same run. I remember it last week. I remember the week before as well, and the event before that as well. It was the exact same thing. So Ike's is always the easiest impression. Everyone can do a pretty good. Do you know Ike?
I've never met him.
Dude, we need to find. He got into the Hall of Fame. He's actually the next inductee into the Hall of Fame, and it was meant to be in Orlando. For the he was flying over here for it. Yeah. It would have been perfect. Oh. So do you know who Ike is?
Yeah, I've heard.
I've dude.
Heard, I think Rusty told some good stories.
Well, I can't tell him. But yeah, there's a lot of stories that aren't going on the podcast. But he would always have this thing where he used to do this snowball effect as well, where he'd be like, he would relate something minuscule to him not becoming 3-time world champion or something. So he'd be sitting there with he'd be like, I used to joke about the snowball effect, and it would be like, maybe if I'd made it to the Mac shop on time, I would have been able to get my new Mac in time, done my emails, then would have been able to get a couple more sponsors, would have been able to get to a couple more team trips, learned the new tricks, would have gotten onto the Pro Tour a bit earlier, then gotten a few more wins on the Pro Tour and probably would have been 3-time champ by then. And you're like, all because you freaking missed your appointment at the Mac shop. It was always so funny the way he used to talk about it.
One thing leads to another, you never know.
Yeah. And then what they want me to do, the impressions. What am I, the impression guy? Is that what Ollie reckons?
Apparently you are. So that's what I think. Yeah.
Who are the other impressions?
Chad and Rusty. Those are the two.
Chad. Well, Chad's just always got his spitter in.
Yeah.
So he's always spitting there and freaking. I don't know. I feel bad doing impressions of people on a freaking podcast for him, man. It's like I've already flamed Phil, I guess.
Yeah, Phil's not going to listen to this one, so you don't got to worry about that.
Yeah.
All right. I think we dive into another Patreon question. So we'll get one from Garrett Cortez.
Oh, sick.
Break down the idea to use a giant kicker and jump the island with Chad Sharp. So kind of bringing Chad back into this. At the Roanoke shoot, 2010, 2011.
Yeah, man. That was heavy. We started... Chad and I were the token kicker guys. I don't know, like circus monkeys, freaking...
Go back 7.
Yeah, make me money. But we were the circus guys that had just hit shit. And I remember Chad built this stupid freaking big kicker back in the day. And he's like, oh, I'm going to do Chad impressions.
Perfect. There you go. There you go.
Do you know, got a big kicker I've made over here. I'm sick. So he's like, it's seriously like the size of my house. So I'm he wound me up into doing impressions anyway. Anyway, so then I go over to his house and we do this, a practice run because he was doing it. I think it was it might have been an alliance thing where he was hitting the kicker and he jumped over a pontoon party or some shit. anyway, we went over there and the kicker was going for ages. They may even have it at Lake Ronix still. It lived on for a long time, this kicker. But it was outrageous. It was like a freaking, it would be tall. It'd probably be taller than this room. But it had this tiny little bit that like lipped up real late, and it made it an extra probably, I don't know, 3 foot higher, something like that. But it gave you like a full whoop. And dude, it was wild. Chad and I went and practiced on this thing on Hiawassee one day, and it was so gnarly because you had no control because of the little lip on the top of it and stuff. So we ended up taking the top off it, and it mellowed it out a little bit, but it was still stupid, like how big it was. Like there has to be a video. Yeah, exactly. Like it's seriously from Chad's, and when he was living on Hiawassee, it was just sitting out in the middle of the bay, and it was this huge, it was just a structure. It was just so big in the middle of the bay, and we were like, we have to take it off so we can hit it properly at least. So I think there might be a video. It'd be cool to find footage of it, but I haven't. Yeah, before it was cut down. So I think everything I've ever seen of that is from when we took the top off it, but find the one without, it was pretty funny. So anyway, we had the Ronix shoot out at this quarry sort of out past Claremont. So we used to have our shoots. We shot Prime, Defy.
They still shoot stuff there.
Yeah, I can't think. I get Prime and Defy mixed up. But anyway, we did the double ups.
For sure, yeah.
Anyway, we did double ups around this lake, island and stuff. Defy, it's a Danny Half movie. Defy, yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So they, we did the shootout there, and there's this island. And there was always, I remember like Parks, he always used to do jokes about Chad and shit. And Parks is a funny guy for impressions and shit as well.
It was Parks.
Yeah, and he goes, and then Parks always used to like joke because we'd just be doing something. You're like, you think I could jump to the projects? Like we'd have something like always be like that. So, but it was like true Chad fashion. He's like, hey Dino, you think we could jump the island over there? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, maybe we go get my kicker. So then we ended up getting his kicker and set it up on the other side of the island, and like jumped over the palm tree. And there's like, I had a full blown poster because we had some low down shots that Spencer Smith, Big Spence took, and you can kind of tell how high it is. Like it's obviously really high, but then I had a shot from the side, which may or may not have been Garrett. I can't remember who took them from the side, but it was from a full landscape shot of me going over the top of the palm tree.
Yeah, and
then I remember on the poster. We had, because it used to be my signature poster for Pro Tour stops and stuff. And it used to have a website URL you could click on, and it was hereallyDidThis.com. And you click on it and redirect you to the Manor, my pro model on Ronix. And but that was what Chad and I ended up setting it up and hitting this freaking kicker and jumping the island and stuff. But I think it was that prior to that as well, that year in Australia, I designed a almost like a ski jump with transition that I'd hit for another movie called Canvas, and it was quite literally like they put a lot of money into it. I remember like Daniel Watkins and Mick Watkins, Daniel's brother, said like, we're going down to Moala Ski Club. They want to put a show on. They've let you design whatever kicker you want, because I was the kicker guy apparently. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. And I go, let's just build like a ski jump style thing with transition, boot, and one like that you hit at like 28 mile an hour. Like boat's going quick, everything on the arc, everything. And I was like, they're like, all right, no worries. So they built it, and it was properly like out of steel. Like, it was like a ski jump. It was bulletproof. I turn up, and it's like significantly more aggressive than I was expecting. And we hit it for this demo ski show thing that I did. And I hadn't gotten to practice on it or anything. And the first hit that I had, because it was so wide, the rope caught, I tried to go corner to corner, and the rope caught the front of the kicker and it just sent me off into a spiral, and it landed on the bank. So then we had to like angle it out kind of so it wasn't in the way anymore. And then I ended up shooting with Greg Weatherall And that was when I was like, that first set, I was like, I remember I was doing like melon 9s and 7s and stuff over like 100 foot. It was stupid. Like I've never hit anything like it. And it was so aggressive. I had to have Daniel driving because he had to be able to drive. I had to hit it on the whip. He was flying in and then hit it on the whip. And then he'd have to straighten up when I was in the air to get the tension off.
Yeah.
So I'd go up and just blow out a big melon and then just do like a late 900 or 7. I think I did 1 9. I butt checked it though, but I did a bunch of really good 7s. And then so I hit it for a full day for that, and I was filming for something. I can't think what it was. But then the following day, I had to shoot for Canvas, and Josh Robinson had teed up for me to ride. And he's like, and I was like telling him that night, I was like, dude, like this is pretty dope. Like I was doing pretty big freaking 7s and 9s and stuff. But then I turned up the next day and I'm ruined. And I'm like, so for the movie, we got some good clips for Canvas. I was doing like 5s and 3s and stuff. But they were like real big and it was aggressive. And then I finished that off, and the following day, someone else wanted me to shoot on it again, Adam Dodd. And I'm like, I cannot physically stand up right now. And it was like 2 full days of hitting this one kicker. And dude, I look like I was 90 years old. I'm trying to walk around after it all. And like, I don't know what happened to that kicker for it all, but like, yeah. So then after that, then we went over and Chad built his one and stuff. So we became like the kicker guys and stuff, the circus clowns, because if we got knocked out of the Pro Tour stop, it didn't matter. We still had something to do at the events. It was hilarious.
Oh man. Okay. So you talked about Canvas there. I want to talk about some other video parts too. So you've had a few. My favorite was 30 something, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with Defy. So speaking of kickers, kicker to pool gap session, Radar Lake. Remember
Kicker
that?
to pool gap. Oh, at Radar.
Yep,
Yeah.
That looked like a fun session.
That was cool. It was gnarlier than it looked. I think it like, I remember when everyone saw it and it kind of, I don't know, like I feel like people were playing it down that weren't there. Cause I remember
It looks pretty gnarly to me.
it was, man. And it was gnarlier than I think that people gave it credit for.
Yeah.
Like, I remember hitting it, and I think the best gauge of how gnarly it was is it was one of the first times I've ever seen Chad gun shy. Like Chad was notorious for being like the crash test dummy in anything. Like remember early Pointless days, I remember like everybody like talked to anyone, and he was like build this piece of shit rail that's about to fall down, and Chad would go and hit it first and just didn't care, right? But like, it was the first time I remember he had like a stack when he was coming out of the C rail on the way out, and he like missed and he wouldn't hit it again. And it was like, that was like point where I was like, it's got like, obviously if Chad's gun shy on it, then it's pretty gnarly. And then we were hitting it at night too.
Yeah.
So it was, I put a lot into that for me. Like I was already going really well. Like, but like for me to be in that movie, I wanted to lay down a bit of a heavy part in that. Yeah. It was a pretty big platform, you know, especially on the Ronix team. It was like at that point was that star-studded Ronix team still. So like I went pretty ham on that pull gap, just to sort of make a bit of a, I don't know,
little statement. Yeah,
100%, man. So like I remember like I think I did a cab 9 in and a back 7.
Definitely back 7.
Yeah. So it was like, I feel like after I did that, I remember like filming, and I remember like Kilgus already like wanted to film with me and stuff. But after that, I had, Kilgus was always like trying to keep me super involved in anything he did, because I was like, if he filmed, I was all in. Like whatever it is, like whether we were shooting Defy, Prime. I'd shot for a movie like Bent Felix back in the day too, but I was like a bit of a side thing, I was a side thing because I ended up having a couple of good sets behind it and had some big tricks and stuff. They came out to Australia and filmed, and I was in that. But it was only like a handful of clips and stuff that sort of finangled my way into the movie just from being there and then writing well. And then, so then after that, I was like, Kilgus was always keeping me super close to any project.
You see a kid who's, you know, hungry and wants to put effort into it. Yeah. Get some time in front of
but yeah, that was a big setup. Like when we turned up there and we saw it on the side of the hill, because Danny was trying to explain to us what he designed. And we
it's a sick design, and that's what Ruck got Trick of the Year.
Mode, man, that was gnarly. Yeah, because like if you miss a handle or you do anything going up, you're going somewhere where you just don't need to be. Like you like onto the bank. Like the pool was also that deep.
It didn't look deep when
No, I ended up. I can't think what I went. Oh, I went to try. I actually after I'd done the spins and stuff, I was comfy spinning going in, but it's always hard. I think that was the thing about Ruck doing his mute mode. Maintaining like a consistent line tension, especially when you're flipping as well, is a lot harder. Because I went to Indy Moby Dick up into it, and I lost everything. I lost my line tension going up into the pool, and as I'm coming around trying to pull for the line tension, nothing's there, and I just got lost and basically just tucked and rolled and landed in the pool. I landed on my head, but like I was all good. Yeah. But it was sketchy as. And then so for Ruck to sort of mute mode in was heavy, like because it was sketch. It would have been not long after I'd landed on my head trying the Indy Moby Dick going in, and I'm like, oh, I think I'm done.
Yeah, Ruck, smooth operator though.
Man, that was sick. He deserved that.
Yeah, that pool is gnarly because I feel like that's one of those situations where you land and then you land on an edge aggressively, and if you don't let go and put the brakes on right away, it's like you're out of the pool. And like it could get kind of bad or land on your head.
Yeah, I remember doing the back seven. I remember Dan and Ruck were both in the boat for that, and I just remember like Ruck and Danny stand up, pumping it up. It was sick.
Yeah, it's a sick little session there. All right, let's move on to quiet, please. So you did say off camera you weren't the most stoked on your part in this.
Oh, but there was good parts in it. Like
I liked the movie.
It's cool. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm a critic of myself, but there was it was just one of those sections that ended up being more rushed, and we released it quicker than we needed to. It was we released it like we did the movie with Wakeboarding Mag, and there was always this we wanted to do it over quite a long period, and we just didn't get to film it as much as we wanted to for it, and it got quite rushed towards the end. And the part that I got, there was a lot of stuff that I wanted in there, a lot of stuff that I sort of didn't really want in there. It was just, it wasn't what I thought. It was a really good platform that I could have one of those statement sections. And it just didn't end up being that. It was like a section where people would come up to me and go, yeah, man, you rode good and stuff, but it wasn't like that.
Holy shit, that clip was insane.
Man. And that's what I wanted out of it. And that wasn't it. It was just a section where everyone would go, oh yeah, Dean ride's good. Yeah. I don't know. It wasn't anything new. There wasn't like, you watched the section and it wasn't like you got anything new out of me watching me ride. It's like, I just watched another 3 minutes of Dean riding.
There was a good clip though. I got to give you some flowers in this one.
That?
Double backside, or not double backside, double poke, backside 180. So you do a backside 180 to the flats and you poke it once and then you pause and then you poke it again.
That's probably a lot to do with the rotation of the trick too.
It just looks good.
It's just a natural thing because like, you grab it and then you rotate and then I think at that point it's not even that intentional. I think the second poke happens naturally.
I was going to ask because you don't see that all too often. You really don't see people poking it that hard anyways. So you do the double poke.
It's my favorite trick.
Bam.
Yeah, like that back one.
One's good. How about two?
That trick will be going. That trick's going nowhere. I did one. I rode yesterday. Still can't walk.
Hey, he rolled in here on a wheelchair.
Yeah, but it's like still one trick that I will do because like riding's different now for me because I couldn't really care how I ride overall, but it's just one trick, right? All I need is one trick in a set and I'm stoked. So I will go out of my way. If I do a back one, like whether indie, stale, mute, whatever, and I butt check it, I'll go back and do it until I get it exactly the way and then I can keep the set going because I've got that one trick down that I absolutely had to get perfectly.
Sometimes you just need the little things. That's all you need. Yeah. In Quiet Please, though, I did notice you had a Taiga sticker on your board. Mm-hmm. And then later in the part, you had an Axis sticker on your board.
Other way around.
Or was it? Well, I guess that's the order of the clips that they came, but it could have been.
Yeah. They actually, from that, because like we were low on clips, and they actually they borrowed some clips from Axis at that point for the video because it was like unused footage. I'd left Axis, and Axis were really cool to like let them use some of the clips from the team shoot. Because I was with Axis, that was my first ever boat sponsor, and proper boat sponsor. I had stickers on boards and stuff, and had a bit of a quasi nautique deal out of Australia at one point, which is a whole nother story, that one. But that was my first factory deal was with Axis, and I had a really cool relationship, still do, with them as well. Like Adam McCall, who was heading that company up at that point. Adam is, I'd say he's probably the smartest person I've met in the industry. Became almost like a big brother kind of thing, mentor for me in the industry. Probably would have for Trevor too. I don't know if you did with Trevor and he brought up Adam or not, but I know that I was talking about Adam to Trevor. I was just hanging out with Trevor this week, an hour, and he said Adam just turned up to his wedding unannounced when they went there and stuff, and said it was rad. But so I had like a really good relationship with Adam, and when I had an offer from Tiger, it was for significantly more money. Like I wasn't on much money with Axis at that point, but there was a lot of love and it worked good. I was on the team with Trevor Mauer and Randall, and
it was a sick team.
Yeah, we used to joke, like we used to take the piss out of ourselves and call ourselves the B team. And we'd be at the team shoot, we're like the B team, and Lani, who used to be the head of marketing for Malibu, used to get, I don't know, she didn't know if we were taking it entirely seriously about being the B team and stuff. And I remember at the team shoot, and we used to take the piss, and we were like, B team engaged, like Randall and I and freaking Trevor going down to the dock. And I remember Lani coming in and being like, "No, you're not the B team. You're my A team for Axis." And she was like trying to pump us up or whatever about, you know, not being the second fiddle to Malibu and all that sort of stuff. The B team thing is what
pumps us up.
Yeah. And we were just joking and whatever. But it was a really cool vibe around it all. And then Adam left, and then Matt Bishop, who's now works for Nautique, he was a big part of the Axis brand as well. He was what we used to call ourselves, the Wolfpack, with it all, and he left, and then I had the offer from Tiger, and it was like,
how much are we talking? What's the difference between Axis and then Tiger?
It was a few grand a month.
Okay, so we were talking.
Yeah, big. Yeah, it was a significant amount more.
Yeah.
Than what Axis were offering, and it was money, man. So I was like, no chance. I couldn't take it. I was like, are you guys even going to be in the ballpark to match this? And they're like, no, like we're not even close. And I'm like, so it sucked. Like it was, but then I obviously had the Tiger thing, and it was like the financial incentive was the main thing, right? Like me and Rathi signed for him, and then the idea was that we were going to be trying to rebuild a brand. That they had a new boat coming out.
Rathy's been involved in that a couple times.
In rebuilding brands.
I mean, not rebuilding a brand, but a new boat coming out. They signed, like when Mastercraft brought out that new, I think it was the new X-Star, right? They brought Rathy on again.
Yeah, they did.
Anyways,
I mean, Rathy's
journeyman is what I was,
Yeah, Rathy's had some bad luck and stuff with brands. Like for a guy that's arguably top 3 ever.
Yeah.
He really probably didn't get the paychecks that he probably could have, right?
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, board company, he kind of got, I mean, I don't want to say cock-blocked, but he kind of did, and he could have been on the top pipeline team too. Anyway, so shout out Rathy, sorry, man.
Love you, Rathy.
Anyway, so but yeah, we're both on Tiger and trying to build it all, and be as diplomatic as I can, the whole conversation here, but it was just like, but bottom line, like the whole thing never worked, right? There was a lot of things that went wrong from start to finish on that whole project. And it just didn't happen, right? And the way it all fell apart, it pissed me off a fair bit too, because we'd basically, a lot of the athlete contracts, which sucks to say, a lot of them aren't even worth the fucking money they print, like what it's written on, like the paper it's written on, like most of them have these get out of jail free clauses, and ultimately allow brands to just freaking, without really any
no consequence,
without any reason. Like there was an obvious reason with Tiger, because it became the whole project there at that point was it just didn't work, right? But what they were trying to do with that boat and stuff just didn't happen. and there was obviously no pathway for it to continue. So I did, to be fair, like, I mean, it's not like I'm surprised, but the contract, I still had like 18 months left on my contract.
Yeah.
But they basically, and I was a little bit pissy about it all because I was just like, no way, like, really?
It's a long time.
Yeah, like, it's money. Like, and I also cut ties with a brand that I had a good relationship with in Access, even though I wasn't making that money. And, you know, you go somewhere, you get paid, cool, take the money. But I know that Rathy was a lot more pissy about it all. I mean, we'll both, but probably get a different point of view on this from him, I would imagine. But I mean, it was a little bit, I'm trying to think of the word how when it, I don't want to say, I was pissy about the whole thing, how it all happened. And I'd gotten the heads up from Rathy because he'd been sacked before me. And this is how Nautique came about. And he said, hey, heads up, I got the call and it's all over. And I'm like, really? And he goes, have they spoken to you? I'm like, no. And I was like, okay. So I was like, fuck, if I like lose my boat company now, like, one, that's a shitload, like that's a big chunk of income for me. And I don't have anywhere to go. I'm like, fucked. So then I'm like, I need to figure this out. So then straight back to Access. And I'm like, I'm back. And I remember like Bryant Thomas, he's a good friend, and he's still at Malibu Access now. I think he's moved into a different role. But he was team manager and stuff at that point. And he's just like, nah, man, that's not how it works. And like, rightfully so, right? Like, fair. I left on my freaking thing, took the paycheck. Like, he's basically like, eat shit. Fair enough. And I kind of expected it, kind of did. And I hoped that I was going to be back. Anyway, so then I'm like, fuck. So then I speak with Nautique in Australia. I've always had a good relationship sort of with a lot of the guys at Nautique. Like with Brian Sullivan's a good friend. And I don't know if it was just the fact that I'd been friends with him prior. Like I'd never wanted anything from him or like just, I don't know, I used to play soccer with him on Wednesdays and stuff and never really wanted anything from him. I don't know. Thought he was a funny guy. And I would, so I finally got in touch with Nautique in Australia, and then they then said, look, we'll explore this. This could work. I'm like, oh, shit. Like, this is the brand. Like, this is the brand that I really, like, anyone wants to be on. Like, and I was just like, holy shit. So then started going backwards and forwards with Brian and told him the deal. I'm under contract, like, at the moment still. I know that I'm being
They haven't called you yet, though.
I haven't got the call, but it's coming. I know for a fact it's coming. And he's like, right on. So we went backwards and forwards. And they offered me Nautique offered me like a legit contract. I thought a boat. I just want a boat.
I need to ride behind something here.
I just want a G. Can I have a G? I just want a G. Like, it's all I want. And I didn't expect anything more. And to this day, I mean, Brian, I got this red carpet into Nautique, and I still don't really get how or why. But like, Jimmy LaRich even made a joke comment. He goes, man, you've come in on the top of the company. Like, it was funny to get this shoehorn in to Nautique and had this contract laid out for me. And I'm like, no way. Like, holy crap. Like, I've done it. How have I pulled this off? So then, anyway, we went backwards and forwards. And then Brian's like, well, let me know when it all ends. And we'll sort it out. I'm like, sweet. And I reckon it would have been an hour.
No shit.
Yeah. And I got a call from Tiger. Hey, man. Like, and they were like bummed out. You know, I was still pissed. Like, basically, not like, fuck you, kind of like, you're going to cut my contract with 18 months to go. So I was a little bit spitey, and I can be like that. I was a little bit, I probably.
A little firecracker.
I probably could have a little bit more. I didn't say anything, but it was what I did after. I was could have been a little more diplomatic, but it was still pretty funny. In hindsight, I don't know.
What'd you do after?
Yeah. So anyway, so basically I call Brian back an hour later after I spoke to him, and I'm like, it's over. He's like, really? What? I go, yeah, since we spoke, like it's over. Like, I'm like, we can do it. And he goes, no way. And he goes, all right, man, I'll send you through the contract. So I've been off contract for Tiger for about 15 minutes and had gotten the contract from Nautique.
Oh, we got an Instagram post coming in hot. Is that what's going on
Yeah.
here?
And I signed my Nautique contract. And then it wasn't immediately, but then I like did I mean, it was funny. It was very tongue in cheek, maybe a little immature of me, I guess, because I was a pissy.
Oh, that's what makes it
so
fun.
then, but that year I'd been riding with Danny a lot, and I had put a photo of me doing wrapped in D7 or something, and had to crop the boat out of the shot because it's riding behind a G. So then I reposted the photo and left the G in it and said, stoked to announce that I've signed for Nautique, looking forward to not having to crop boats out of photos anymore. And like, it was like the whole comment thing was like everyone knew exactly what I'd done, going like, holy shit, shots fired or whatever. And it was like definitely like me having a full, like a jab, quite obviously. It wasn't like subtle or anything, but like, and then I got a call from Tiger and they were kind of like, wow, I remember him being like, text rather, and he was like bummed out. He's like, wow, man, no hard feelings, huh? Like basically like, I'm like, nah, man, like I'm good. And then I remember like talking to, after I'd done it, and everyone was texting me and he's like, how have you pulled this off? Like, it's like the great escape. Like, it was so funny. Like Bryant from Malibu messaged me and is just like, no way. Like, are you kidding me? How have you pulled this shit off? Like, cause he thought I was like dead in the water too and whatever. So yeah, anyway, but yeah, it was good. Like I was only with Nautique for the last few years that I was in the sport, but it was like, I always felt at home at that company anyway. Like I was friends with Brian Sullivan and everyone at the brand, and like, dude, I was stoked to just get to ride behind my boat. I was in love with my boat and stuff, so it worked out. Like at the time, I thought that I'd completely fucked my career, and in hindsight, like I couldn't have timed.
You couldn't have timed it.
It was unbelievable.
We're talking down to the minutes.
Yeah, like I would have been between, and I felt bad for Rathi too, because that was at the point where he was. Yeah. You know, he copped it in the neck, like bad because of it all.
Well, gave you the heads up, which allowed you to explore some other options.
Yeah, like straight up. Like if he hadn't called me to give me the heads up, I mean, he was going to tell me like to vent anyway. Yeah. He was calling me to vent, but like, yeah, I'd had enough time to tee everything up and everything. But yeah, it was pretty funny how it all happened. But yeah, I was off contract from a boat company for all of that 15 minutes.
We love that.
Yeah, it was pretty savage.
I mean, yeah, but that's what makes some of this stuff fun. It's like, that's also like, it adds a whole nother element to wakeboarding. Like I always thought it was cool when you see someone riding behind a different boat and you're like, oh, did they sign a contract yet? Like, what's the deal? Are they on this brand? Like, it's just interesting to the fans of the sport.
Yeah. Like everyone knew that the post, it was pointed and everything.
That's good though.
Yeah. And I was a little bit,
it's not like you're saying,
I was a little bit pissy.
As you should be though. That's totally fair. Like, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk 30 something. Mm-hmm. So first off, this video has been removed from Rockstar. So
someone told me that the other day. Someone went to watch that.
And that must be somewhat recent because I definitely watched it within the last 6 months to a year on their channel.
Oh yeah.
But I wanted to watch it 2
days ago. Yeah, I can't think who told me that. They went to literally do the same thing and all it was something private or something.
It's private. They're all private.
Yeah,
I think there's other wake parts too. Like I think Rathy's got one that's private. Anyways.
I don't know. I hope I get a hold of the video
somewhere. I did find the video. So Kebab Board Shop posted it. They ripped it like 8 years ago. We're 2016, 2017.
Kebab.
Kebab. I don't know. Never heard of it. But they post on their Facebook. So
I probably have it on an email somewhere.
I'll put that link in the description so you can watch this video part because I love the video part. It's sick. Why did you decide to make a video part at the age of 30? I mean, I
still hadn't done my
your banger
time stamped.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to, I always knew that I had a big section in me and I wanted to, and I shot for Defy, I shot for Prime, but I was like, I like shooting with Kill, like Sean Kilgus, but it was like, I didn't want to do the whole side project. I wanted to do one where it was just like, I wanted it to be, like Kilgus is amazing to shoot with because it's the cinematography of it, right? Like the shots that Kill gets are incredible. I wanted to do a video section right around me, like just about the riding. Like I want to go out there and we're going to spend the freaking morning and shooting it with Rathy was like the best thing ever. Like to have him as like the pump up man / like the visionary.
He also has a really good vision for around the camera.
Dude, he is unreal, man. And it wouldn't have come out the way it did without him. And So having that, I just wanted to be able to make it entirely about the riding. Like we get the cinematography sick, but it's about me. I just wanted to put down a banger and put tricks in there that I hadn't done, because I had like a heap of new tricks and stuff that I hadn't really had on film yet. I just didn't want that to be the generic, oh yeah, cool, there's Dino's freaking Indy Moby Dick and this is
X7, yeah.
Whatever, man, yeah. And I wanted it to be completely, I like I said, I wanted to be like my timestamp section. So, started filming it with Rafi, and it took us about a year, I think we filmed for it, but it was all his, like, having him on board and having him to like pump up and then get the shots right and do the setup shots and stuff that we did for the double ups and cut in shots and all the angles. And then
a guy you can trust.
He had everything, man. Like he was unreal to film with. Like I would have probably wanted to shoot with him if it wasn't a Rockstar thing anyway. But it was like, just to get the shots we did and stuff, it was pretty much, we cut it down. We were meant to get more stuff out at Lake Ronix, which would have really topped it all off even more so. But I was properly injured. There's some stuff in that where there's a kicker up to the quarter pipe.
I wanted to talk about this clip, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a kicker up to the quarter pipe. My knee's cooked. It was bad. And then we did it over a couple of other days, and I'd hit the top pool, do like a trick out of the top pool down to the bottom or something into the actual lake, like a back one or something. And my knee was really bad at that point, and I was like trying to baby it as much as possible. And then we tried to get what we got there from Lake Ronix was like, it was only over the space of 3 days or something. Like we didn't get to.
Really?
I wanted to shoot out there for a while, but but we had a cutoff date from Rockstar when it had to be released, and I physically couldn't ride anymore. I think I'd had a tear in my knee at that point, which is, I never got sorted, but it's just worked its way out. Yeah, I don't know, you get you get meniscus just flicks up like that. My knee was doing that, and there's like that one clip, especially on that. Kick it to quarter, and I land. I don't know if you can see in the clip, dude. I felt my knee exploded.
Is it the back one, switch front 3 out?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I went back
Hey,
one.
you almost look like you were clipped on. Like you were this close to, it looked like at least.
I don't know. I didn't feel it, but
I'll put the clip in because it looked close.
All it felt was when I landed, man, and it felt like my knee exploded. And I was like we had all these other clips where we were trying to get on the wall, and we went round to the original wall on the front lake, and I hit that a few times, and I just couldn't do it.
Things up there.
I was like, we had these clips we wanted to get and stuff, and so it wasn't like I was bummed. Like we got pretty much everything we wanted, but then after a year's worth of riding and stuff, and my body ended up just like finally, we just snuck it in basically. Like what we got was enough to I was stoked on the clips we got at Lake Ronix, was dope, but then I couldn't physically do it anymore.
Yeah.
My knee was just Dunskies.
Yeah, that's fair. So I was going to ask you why you made a video part at the age of 30 when some people go almost a whole career without not having a video part, but
I don't understand that.
I don't understand that either.
I blows my mind. Like I talk about this, it's like in my mind, the biggest thing you can do as a writer is your video part. Like there has to be, in my mind, has to be a video part that you can like look back on for your career as boom, there it is.
Yeah.
There it is. Like that's your freaking sign off, whatever it is. Like Raph has 5.
all of them, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like whatever. But like most people will have like Danny has Defy, like, like everyone has their big movie that they have or their part and stuff. So I don't get how you can go your career without any interest in doing like your own full part and having that reward at the end of it for doing it, like a year of busting your ass.
Yeah.
Like I just don't think people think that it's a 3-minute video or a 3.5-minute video or whatever. That's a year's worth of clips trying to get it. Like I think it's 20, like some magic numbers, like 23 clips or something, I think for the part. I think it's I think when you usually average it all out, it's not many, right?
Yeah.
But by the time you get it all done, like you go out and you might shoot for a week and get one clip.
A couple of seconds of footage.
Couple of
usable
seconds,
footage,
man, yeah. And if you're lucky, you might get, a couple. Like I remember going for a double upset for that 30 something and got a couple of clips in the one set, and it was just like, holy shit, like we're on, freaking ticking these off. But then you go ride and you can't hit it again, and you get the shits and freaking start slapping the water and freaking.
And that's the fun part, though.
It's
that's
frustrating part. Yeah, I think
it's frustrating, but that's what makes it like you're satisfied.
Yeah, I was like trying to learn double tantrums for it and stuff at that point, and like couldn't do it. And like that was so funny. It was the only time that Rathy was getting over me. He was like properly getting like bored of me trying double Indy tantrums, dude. That was he was so patient, and that double Indy tantrum came out of nowhere too. That I got in that part, like it wasn't even that clean. But I was like told Rathy, like, we are putting that in. I do not care that it's not that clean. It's going in, like, and he goes 100% after what we've been through, months and months of me trying to balk on him. Like Rathy would come out, freaking meet me at 5 a.m. to go get fuel. We'd sit there and shoot double ups for like an hour out the front to watch me do laid out tantrums off the double up, man. I'm like, he's like, fucking oath, this thing's going in the movie. So yeah, it was pretty funny. But he, like to get that reward of shooting for a year and stuff, like, yeah, I don't understand it, but whatever.
So you go big, you go real big. Yeah, I don't understand either, but you go really big. Or did go really big in your career. And I'm wondering, at what point does going so big hurt less than just going kind of big? Or does it?
Like landing.
The landings.
The further out you land, the less it hurts.
So the bigger you go, the less going big hurts.
Yeah, try and do a back 180. If you're standing, if you're next to the wake, it's really easy to stand there and do an ollie back 180. If you edge halfway out, it's awkward. If you notice that, like you're trying to do a ollie back 180 halfway out, and it's a little bit weird. If you edge all the way out and do a back 180, it's super easy, right? So it's these two spots. Yeah. It's a bit like the line tension gets a little bit more mellow on you, right? So when you hit the flats, you either want to properly hit the flats. The landings get easier, right? If you like land in the hole or in that sort of halfway area, that's where landings
kind of past the bubbles or whatever.
Yeah, which is hard because that means if you're learning a trick into the flats or you're trying to do a trick and go big or whatever, it's a lot of commitment. So it's really hard to just sit there and freaking go, well, here we go. And just like lean back and cut as hard as you can, right? Because a lot of the time you're going a little bit more tentative. So like the landings are a lot harder.
Yeah.
You either want to go full sand and full noise in, and then, but then you've got to properly commit, because then if you kook it, you're going toast. You get smoked. Yeah. So that's the reason anyway.
I got a couple kind of rapid fire random questions here. First one is, who made more money from wakeboarding, you or your wife?
Amber, I don't know. That'd be interesting. I've never added it up. We'd probably be very similar. Like when we first got together, we were making really similar money. Like she had big contracts. Like Amber did really, really well. Because she had like Oakley and
I heard
stuff.
at Oakley, she was really high up on Oakley.
Yeah, like I had a big contract. Like maybe me, because I had my Ripco contract. My Ripco contract was a big contract. It was my Rippy contract kept me going for a long time. Because I remember because Watkins was on Rippy as well.
Rippy, I like that.
Yeah, and I remember I was second fiddle to D Dubs. And I kind of got the shits. I was getting frustrated because I was like, Daniel was 100% like, keeping me back. Like,
he's boxing out.
100%, man. Like, and why wouldn't he? Like, he knew I was like, he knew I wanted the big contract. There was only one big Ripco contract, and he was like, and I remember he told me, he goes, wait it out, man. Trust me, wait it out. You'll get the big contract. Because I don't think I really looked anywhere properly, but I remember getting frustrated at one point because I think I had to renew. I was on a contract here and thought my contract was going to go up, and it didn't. It was exactly the same, and it wasn't bad money. Like might have been like $1,500 a month or something like that, but it was like been sitting here hearing about this mythical freaking Ripco contract that you make good money on and stuff, and Daniel had it as far as I knew, and he was doing everything he could to keep it at bay. But then finally it comes around and you get it and you're like, whoa, sick, we're on. So yeah, the Rip Curl contract I had, but it was always funny because there was only the one contract, and I remember I had to do the same thing boxing out as well, because when companies started peeling out like Quicksilver, because I was chilling, I'm on Rippy by myself, like I'm hanging, like, and it was dope. Like I got paid really well. The clothing's sick, wetsuit. Like I was head to toe, so there was like footwear, eyewear, watches. Like it was like I used to walk into Rip Curl. I had a code for any shop that was owned by Rip Curl in Australia, and I could go in and I basically had free reign, no budget. So I used to walk in before I used to go to the US, and I'd walk out with like 25 bags, like just absolutely pull the shop apart. I'd have like 7 pairs of new shoes, like freaking 10 pairs of sunnies, 6 watch. It was obscene. And I never got pulled up until by anyone in budgets at Rip Curl until like a long way in. And I remember Mark Flanagan, who's still the team manager at Rip Curl now, absolute legend of a bloke. And he calls me up and he goes, "Did you go to Cronulla Rip Curl like not long ago?" And he goes, I go, "Yeah." And he goes, 12 grand? And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Did you say 12 grand of product out of the shop?" And I'm like, "I don't know." He goes, because they give you, I used to get a receipt and it would just get credited back to, I'm assuming back to Rip Curl headquarters, whatever, but it's all zeroed out. I've got a list of shit that I took.
Yeah.
And he goes, 12 grand? And he's like, what do you do with it all? I go, "I don't, what do you mean? What do I do with it?" He goes, he's like, "I've got like an account with this company and like I might use $300 and I'm cool. Like, what did you get?" And I'm like, "I don't know, man. Like,
Yeah, I got it all.
Didn't I get it all on my budget? Like, I'm all good, right?" He goes, "Well, yeah, but yeah, we'll talk about this later." So then they said, "Well, just don't get any more for a little while until you get back or whatever." I'm like, "Oh, all right, sweet." I'm like, I got my contract that says that I can take this. It's all sweet. So it used to be sick. Like I used to it was a dope company because like it was just me. They used to basically put all their marketing budget into the athlete. And they said that. They said, look, they used to do the back cover of the mags and that was it. So I was always on the back cover. So some of the times I'd be on front and back cover for magazines, which was amazing for like freaking incentives and shit too. So like it was awesome. Now it sucks. Now they've backed out of the industry pretty much. But it was like a funny company because I was the only one there and same thing, like boxing around. I remember Harley just left Quicksilver and he's like, "Hey, what's going on with Rip Curl at the moment?" I'm like, nothing.
Budget cuts, man. I don't know. It's not looking good over here.
Don't know, man. And he was like snooping around at Rip Curl for a little bit, I remember, and I'm just like, "Don't you dare!" and it was like other people too, but it was like they were so good to me for so long. And then, like I said, they looked after me even after I finished the company.
Yeah.
Like I owe a lot to that company. Like I had a long-term contract with them. They were loyal. But it was funny. I remember they had the original team manager. This is when Daniel was still there too. And the original team manager was completely surf. I mean, they are surf focused, quite obviously, but he was entirely surf centric. He was pretty much, everyone used to joke that he was basically Mick's manager, Mick Fanning. So he knew nothing about wakeboarding. Zero. And one season I'd had a shit season. Like I really didn't do well at all, and it was a contract year. And I remember thinking, I'm like, this is a bad year to be renegotiating. And it was probably the year that to be fair, they probably didn't drop my contract anymore. But I remember thinking, dude, I have to tell them something that I did better than coming 16th on tour or something. And then I was like, what am I going to do? So then the last event of the year was a World Cup event, IWWF. And they normally have like a few stops and Worlds, but this year they only had one stop. They had one World Cup stop and a World Series and a Worlds, but they were on the same weekend. So you'd ride the Worlds and then the next day was the money event. And I got second at Worlds and third in World Cup. Dino, how was your season? Got third on World Series or on World Cup, man. He's like, yeah.
You throw the W, dude. The world, like, come on.
And so like they're like, yeah. So then it was always funny. Then I win worlds, and they're like, yeah, what's that? Like number 2, number 3. I'm like, no, like I won. So I was like laughing with Daniel because he was like always joking as well. Said the same thing. But they're like when Flano came along, and he was like super up on all the politics and even in wakeboarding and stuff. So I didn't have to lie to him anymore. That was funny.
Need a result? Okay, we got a result. We're going to be all right.
That was good. They were amazing.
So how come once you had a kid, no one wanted to ride with you?
That was a joke. That was a,
I know,
dude, that was a fun. I thought that was a really funny video that we did.
I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, we did a it was
This is referencing
Toddy.
a video.
Yeah.
You did with the Ronix boys.
Yeah, it was a day in life.
Yeah.
And the day in life movies shit me because they're obviously not real. Like if it was real back then, it'd be so we're gonna play Skate 3 for 4 hours and then we're gonna go and get some Chipotle.
Play 9 holes. And
Like if you're being real, right?
Yeah.
So I used to laugh. Oh yeah, we're gonna hit the gym up and do this, and then like I'm like bullshit. I hang out with you every day. You don't do any of this. So like obviously we did more of a parody style video where it was like taking the piss out of being a dad and no one wanting to hang out with me and stuff.
It's funny. I like it.
Yeah, I thought that came out pretty. Todd Watson did that. He did a good job of it actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Parks was very funny in that.
yeah, they got a radar shooter, Ronix shooter, some shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How good is Steve Aoki at wakeboarding? Or did you take him wake surfing?
No, I took him wake surfing.
It was surfing. I couldn't tell. It's a photo of you guys on the boat. I didn't know.
Yeah. He came out to Australia, and it was a friend of my sister's, is his personal photographer. When he comes out, and they just hit us up. He's a bit of a fanatical wake surfer, and he said, "Do you want to take Steve Aoki wake surfing?" I was like, "Sure." So yeah, he came out to Australia, and had his. I actually don't know if it's his wife or his missus or whoever it was, but yeah, we took him out in the boat. He was a freaking legend of a guy, man.
I've heard he's just a super cool guy.
He's got the wild man image and stuff at concerts and throwing cakes at people and stuff. But dude, he was super down, and he was like, it was hilarious. Because Amber came out in the boat, and we had Will in the boat with us as well. So they're just hanging out. I was like, I feel like I got photos of Steve with Will as well. Of like, I wish I have to go dig him around. I was like, this is a keeper photo because he's like hanging out and playing with him in the boat and stuff. And then he was like, yeah, man, next time you come out to Vegas, make sure you let me know and stuff. We've got like in my house and stuff. He goes, do you know Dan? And I'm like, Dan. He goes, you know Bill Zarian? I go, yeah. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, and he goes, yeah, Dan's, Dan comes over and we've got this big playroom area in the house and the kids can play in there and stuff. And he's like, and I was like sitting there and go, I'm going to call your bluff on this. I'm like,
I'm absolutely coming.
Yeah, hang on, put your number in. I'm going to call you when I get to Vegas. So this is like, it's been it would have been like 6 years ago I would have taken him out. Yeah. And part of me wants to like go to Vegas and call him and go, hey man. What's
Vegas
up?
On the way back.
I'm on the way, man. What's going on? So, and just see if he did it. But yeah, it's funny.
Love that.
Yeah, but he was super rad guy, man. I think PB, like Parks has hung out with him a few times. Parks hung out with everyone, but he said the same thing. Yeah, just a pretty casual guy.
Yeah, That's sick. All right, so let's speak kind of the present right now and the future. So do you still ride? If so, how often?
Not often. I try. I just we don't have a boat in Australia, like a wake boat. And my kids ride now. So it's like, it's all centered, like you become a dad, everything's centered around getting them out on the water, which is sick. It's really like nice to do. And so I'll ride doubles with Will and Jamison and they all, I don't know, it's just sick seeing them smile and doing the same thing that we used to do, right? So I ride like that, but like getting to ride boats, not often. Like I'll go to a Nautique owners reunion or a Malibu owners reunion and get to ride behind a boat there and stuff, but I don't get to ride that often. We were up in the St. John's River for the Hyperlight for Education last week, and I got to ride a couple of times this week. Like I said, I rode yesterday behind Noah's brand new Paragon. It was outrageous how big that wake was. So I got carried away. I absolutely got carried away.
You lost in the moment.
Yeah, I did.
Nothing wrong with that.
Well, it's like this is the thing. It's funny. I 100% miss wakeboarding, but it's like part of me is like, it's funny to say, I miss being good at it. Like, it's like a weird thing,
I mean,
right?
that's not, yeah.
It's like I want to go and do the tricks that I could do, right? There's a bunch of tricks that I'd like to do, but part of me, when I could do it, I go, I can't be bothered. It's so hard. Like, it's so much effort. So, like, at least when I ride now, you just do the tricks that
Feel good.
Feel good.
Yeah.
It's fun, and there's like tricks that I'll never lose and still like doing and stuff. But it's yeah, I ride probably more cable than anything now. I've always liked riding cable. And so I get to go and ride a lot in Australia, probably a bit more.
Yeah.
Get out to Penrith a fair bit, like once a month. And then get up to and then work out of the Gold Coast a bit. So I go to Gold Coast Wake Park a bit as well. So I ride where I can.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of riding now, what's your setup? So if you ride boat and cable, what's the setup looking like?
I'm riding a 45 right loaded now, so 145, and then I'm riding a 53 Guara on cable.
Shout out Pedro.
Yeah.
So
he's one of the only riders I fangirl over.
I mean, yeah, he's that
I
good.
do that, boy.
Is that good?
Rips.
What's the rope length and speed on the boat?
It depends
and stance
on
angle.
Depends on. I'm super darked. 18 rather. Super darked.
And that's a big board for you. 145, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't ride any smaller than a 41, 42. Anything smaller than that feels, I can't land.
Yeah.
So 45. I always rode 43s. But now because that right's so fast and so light, sounds funny. I've never liked light wakeboards. I have to have some weight. And so having a bigger board kind of washes out a little bit of that because it's like such a light core on that board. So, but yeah, so I ride 18 degrees. So I ride super darked. And then what was the other? Rope length 80 foot. And then
Speed.
Varies from boat to boat.
Whatever.
I used to ride my G when I was like riding all the time on my G. I think I was like 23.6, but I don't ride that. I haven't ridden that quick for a little bit, so I don't know if wakes are narrower. I don't know. My speed setting on my old G was always 23.6. So I rode last week and I was riding 22.9, 23 maybe.
Okay.
So a little bit slower. So I don't know.
Around there. Wherever's good at 80 feet, though. You're
Yeah, I don't know. I usually ride 80 foot.
All right.
I never really shortened in.
So we're going to talk about retiring, kind of stopping the contest, and then we'll get into some Patreon questions, which will air publicly this Sunday after this episode comes out. But they'll air Wednesday, so the day after this podcast comes out on Patreon. So get a little early if you're on the Patreon. Thanks to all the Patreon subscribers. So yeah, let's talk kind of retiring and ending the career, I guess, which is 2017 when you retired from like competing, right? And I think I was looking at an Instagram post and you kind of mentioned that people were maybe not stoked on the contest scene at that time. Some people were kind of talking shit about contest riding, or maybe the direction of it or whatever.
So this is where I don't know. I do remember saying something along. I think I know what you're referring to. So I think there was like always a thing about the boat riding and people. I feel like it's easy to swing up at people that are riding really well in contests and stuff, and you can talk shit and it's like gymnastics and it's this and that. But like my point when I was talking about that was like the level's so outrageously high. Like I sit in the boat now. I think it's cool now. I get to judge Moomba and a few events now, and I sat in the boat for that and was just like, it was actually funny. Slight segue, but I rode in I had a set in October at an event somewhere, I don't know, and I had a really good set for like me now. Like I got a bunch of stuff back that I didn't think I'd ever get back and landed, and obviously took me 5 goes to get them all, but I hit a bunch of tricks again, and I was like, man, like maybe like at Worlds, like if I can get like a month's worth of riding, like maybe I could like at least get good enough to ride Pro Man and with an aim of making a final. Like that would be pretty dope. Like if I could make a final, it would be pretty freaking cool. And it was so funny because then I was like pumping myself up through the summer and stuff in Oz. And I sat through Moomba. And I'm like, no way. Like, are you kidding? I'm like watching the final and like trying to explain to Tyler Hyam that he went from like first to third because he slipped a grab on his 3-2, like whatever it was. Maybe he got second. I can't remember. But I was just like, the level is so freaking high. It's like watching a video game. Like that riding at Moomba, that final was stupid. And excuse me, told you I'd cough eventually.
Just said 3 hours. No worries.
Yeah, we got there. My point, what I was talking about in that was that I think that a lot of the people that I would hear talking shit on the contest scene are just the people that, like, to be fair, can't compete with that level of riding. And all right, are the people winning all the events? I mean, it's probably different now. Like a lot of the contest riders traditionally weren't the most stylish riders, or they didn't have to be, just doing the hardest tricks, right? But it's probably blurred now. Like Tyler Hyam is one of the dopest riders in the world. Like, and he's winning. Marcy Pifferetti, like my man, like Sam Brown, like any of these guys are just straight up dope. Like Ulf, like that dude, talking about people fangirling, like sat in the boat to watch Ulf ride, man. Like, good God. And it's like, I think a lot of the time, like when I used to watch that back in the day, was like the level was just so high, and I always used to hear people like talk about it, and I was just like, I feel like a lot of the people that would talk shit about it just weren't able to compete at that level anymore. So that was kind of a bit more of a point. I just think it was always, the level's so impressive. To the same token though, and we're kind of getting back to what we were saying about the difference between contests 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, to now, I think that the level of riding is also to the detriment of the sport, in that I feel like the level is at such a high point now that, like, I find it, I can put myself in someone's shoes. If you're a regional rider and when you want to go ride the Pro Tour and you're like, I have to do what? To get through one round?
Yeah.
I've got to do 2 doubles and a 10 to get through one round. So I think it's funny that, like, the progression has moved that far that I genuinely think that it's been at the detriment of, like, the numbers in contests. Like, it's also a lot more there's almost more gatekeeping to the sport now, in that you need a freaking slammed Paragon. You need that slammed Piranha X-Star. You need that big Malibu, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You need a $500,000 boat, which is crazy to think, to physically learn those tricks. Whereas before you didn't. I don't know, you could go learn them off most boats, right? Now you absolutely, to learn all those tricks, you have to have...
You need the mega wake, yeah.
100%. So I think there's more gatekeeping to it. So it's probably... It's crazy to think though. I never thought I would ever see that level of riding, of sitting there and watching Sam Brown and Ty and Mars and Nick Rapper, man. Like we watched that. Nick won Moomba, and it was flawless. Like, you try and pick holes in anyone's riding, and you're like, there wasn't a single thing Nick didn't do in his run that he didn't intend to do. It was exactly what the run that he landed was exactly what he intended to do. Can it be beaten? Sure. But, like, it was flawless. Yeah. And it's like a couple of different doubles and whatever in it, and it's gnarly, man. So, yeah, it's good. Right, watching the contest riding over the last 3 years has been wild, how crazy it's gotten. So,
yeah, I've always thought that, like, talking shit on progression in contest riding is such, like, I don't know if oxymoron is, like, the correct term for it, but, like, contests are to put down the best run possible. Not the most stylish run.
Sure.
It's to put down the best run. The technically hardest run possible.
Harley was always really good with explaining that with judging and shit. He was always, like, sitting in the boat, and he was always explaining, oh yeah, I kind of work out what tricks are better or whatever, and he goes, which one was harder?
Yeah.
That's
it.
That's it in a contest. That's
what you're there for.
Yeah.
You film a video part to do some cool shit.
It's quite literally harder. That's a harder thing to do. Like, it may be that it's not, doesn't have to be. Maybe the fact that it's a 9 doesn't mean that a 7's not better or whatever, but you can. That's literally what you're there. This is harder. You have overall impression, obviously.
For sure, there's other things that go into composition of a run, but, like, you're there to put down the hardest run, because the hardest run is what's just most difficult to do.
It's retarded now, the level.
It is insane.
Watching Sam Brown and all those boys I mentioned, man, it was wild. Watching Ulf ride in a contest is absolutely stupid.
Yeah.
Guy's a gangster.
He's a gangster. Love that guy. All right. So last question before we get on to the Patreon questions. What gets you stoked on wakeboarding right now?
Kids, man. Yeah, sending the grums out. Like they're not obsessed with it or anything, but like now you get out there on the water and stuff and they like going out in the water and it's cool. It's like having that family thing around it all. It's the whole reason that I started in the sport. Well, most people started in the sport, right? And to have it go full circle and it's my kids all involved, it's very, very, very cool now. So that's definitely the big thing for me now. Like they're going to local events and getting involved in stuff. They're actually doing a water ski camp soon as well. So there's a talk about Dean Wing and all that sort of stuff. And
yeah.
So obviously Amber's family, like the Wing family, is absolute ski royalty. Like I don't know if you know who Brett Wing is as well. Like her uncle, like god status in the water skiing world. Like we went to Italy for the wakeboard worlds and we checked into a hotel in Lake Como. Amber checked in as Amber Wing. Guy, as she was checking in, the guy goes, Wing, Brett Wing. And I'm like, no way. And he goes, yeah. And it used to happen all the time. Like she didn't matter where we go in the world, someone would cut the line and for a signing and they go, Brett Wing, you're Brett Wing's daughter. Yeah, no, niece. And then freaking have a Brett Wing story. It was crazy. Yeah. He's like a god status. So anyway, we've got the kids now. There's a water ski camp in Australia on Colombo Creek, and that's like where Ike used to go back in the day, and like anyone, it's like a real core water skiers group. Anyway, it's real hard to get into, but the fact that they're Wings, the kids got in, they got shoehorned in, and they basically got accelerated through because you got to basically go on a wait list and stuff, and they just got put in. So they're going to go.
That's a club right there. Ooh.
Yeah, so they're going to get into this thing and go learn to trick ski and learn to slalom, and I don't know if they learn to jump or anything yet, but yeah, they go and do all that sort of stuff. So there was very little chance that they were ever going to be able to, or that they were going to get away with it, not doing literally everything on the water. So
I mean, you're thinking just about genes, what's in their blood. It's,
Well, like her parents, like it's like getting stoked on wakeboarding. Like we're just on the water now, and it's just cool. Like we go down, and it's like they want to be on the water all the time. Like it's really cool. And whether they're just swimming around down on the dock, whether they're on skis, going for a rip, whether they're wakeboarding, it's sort of just, that's what I can't ever see our life not really revolving around that in some way.
Yeah.
And we always, like it's always, obviously the sport's still a passion, and I don't know how I would ever let that go. And I'm still involved with the sport, like whether I'm out of it now, like professionally, but like whether it's judging or coaching, or I love the sport, and I don't know how I would ever completely. I see a lot of people completely remove themselves from the sport. I mean, we mentioned Phil before as an example. Like there's heaps of people that I know for a fact that have told me that they'll never wakeboard again.
Seems more common in wakeboarding than I'd like to think it is in other board sports.
It's insanely common. Like imagine a professional surfer saying they're not going to surf again. You'll never have that conversation.
No.
And I don't know why wakeboarding is like that, whether it's expensive or I don't know. Like I'm definitely not going to name the people that I'm thinking of now, but like I've had conversations with people who told me that, and I'm like, and this is when they were still pros. They're like, oh yeah, when I'm done, I'll never wakeboard again. I'm like, don't you enjoy it? Like we're literally in the boat right now. Like,
how much better does it get than this? I mean, whether you're doing it for a contract or not, how is this just not objectively like a good time? That's what I don't get.
I'm like offended. Are you not enjoying your time with me right now? Like, I feel like we're having a real good time.
I brought a 6-pack out here. What are you talking about?
I feel like we're really, really having a good day right now. And like, so yeah, I find it funny that it is with wakeboarding, and water skiing's not even like that.
Yeah, they go forever.
Dude, you got in what you like. I'm now around water ski events a lot. Got an over 80 division, 80. We were like going to nationals 2 years ago in Australia. And there's one guy in the over 80s division, man. That's insane. Imagine body probably can hold up. I mean, to be fair, your body doesn't hold up as well. Probably wakeboarding, there's a lot of impact and stuff. But like, even if I'm like cooked and my body's not holding up anymore. And like, I don't know, I'll go take my fins off and go butter around the lake. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. Go ride cable. Go freaking circle jerk around for freaking an hour and carve. Like, whatever. Like, I don't know. There's heaps of people that are like that, and I get it if you're injured, but like, yeah, I find it odd that people just don't want to do it. But I don't ever really see how that would happen with me, and especially Amber and a family. So yeah.
You're not getting out of it. You're not. Yeah, your kids aren't getting off easy, neither are you.
No one lets us out either.
Love it. All right, so let's wrap this up. Is there anybody you'd like to thank or anything you want to touch on?
Oh man, I'll probably have to go back through the whole podcast. I mentioned a heap of people.
You did.
Yeah, there's heaps of people. I'm probably gonna have to miss out a bunch, but obviously Amber, massive part for everything. For me, and being a massive motivation for me as a wife and everything that she's done. So definitely Amber. And I've had, like, I mean, I gave shout outs to like even just general sponsors and stuff and key people. But like I had the Aussie boys in the early days were massive for me as well. Coming over, D-Dubs, Ike, Josh, they were a big part of helping for me to get over here and make a name. So I'd say they were a big part early days as well. So, but yeah, I'm not going to go through a name every single.
I mean,
sponsor or whatever,
you did list a shit ton of names throughout the entire thing.
Yeah. So I think if anyone here, there's probably a lot more people, but man, there was yeah.
Perfect. All right, that's a good way to wrap that up, I think. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming all the way from Australia here to do the pod.
No worries, man.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Yeah, throw a comment down there if you had any thoughts on this episode. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure to rate 5 stars. That does mean a lot. And thank you to all the Patreon subscribers. It really means a lot to have you guys on the Patreon. We'll see you guys next time.